this time, I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Clayton Town Council to order and ask that you stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and our invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for allowing us to gather tonight. We ask that you please be with us and guide our minds and our hearts as we do business for the town of Clayton tonight. For it's in your great name we pray. Amen. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Yes, sir. We would like to request moving item 8A to item 5C.
So noted. Any others? I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Casey, second by Ms. Archer. Any opposed? Or all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Next up, we have introductions and special presentations. We're going to recognize our friends with Caterpillar for some recent assistance they provided to the town. I'm going to read this recognition, then I'll come down and present you with a copy of the recognition and with a small token of our appreciation. Whereas the Edward J. Rapp Customer and Training Center in Clayton, North Carolina is one of Caterpillar's more unique facilities and falls under the Building Construction Products Division. And whereas the Building Construction Products Division is a global division of Caterpillar Incorporated. BCP has facilities in North Carolina, Georgia, the UK, China, India, Japan, and Brazil. And whereas the Edward J. Rapp Customer and Training Center covers 18 plus acres, houses dozens of pieces of equipment, and sits adjacent to key BCP manufacturing operations. And whereas the Clayton Town Council would like to personally thank the Training Center staff for their help with organizing and scheduling this retreat held on Friday, October 28, 2022 at their facility. And whereas on behalf of the town of Clayton, the Clayton Town Council wishes to recognize these employees who represented Caterpillar Incorporated with professionalism and pride. Kyle Bankston, Michael Baston, Olivia Lampy, Deanna Harrell, and Rick Francis. All of this could not have been possible without the cooperation and support of Caterpillar Incorporated. We want to express our gratitude for your time, energy, and enthusiastic support. We look forward to working with you again in the future and maintaining a strong business partnership. For those in the audience and the members watching tonight, we had a small fall retreat for our council recently, and Caterpillar was gracious enough to host us and open their facility, and it was a wonderful facility. Some of the best technology we've ever had when we've had a meeting, huge screen, everything worked, no technology issues. I mean, it's one of those we don't run into that often because usually something happens, but this is one of those days where nothing happened. Everything went off without a hitch, and it was a perfect environment for us to gather and be able to discuss our town's business and plot our town's future without interruption or without, the day-to-day things going on around us, and we really appreciate you. I'm going to come down and present this to you, and then we'll give you a small gift. And we'll ask Chief Barbie to assist me with getting the gifts to you when this is after our photo op.
That's nice. Perfect. Good job. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
And continuing on a upbeat, good note tonight, we'd like to move on to our Downtown Development Advisory Board Annual Report with our presenter, Christy Thompson, who is the DDA Advisory Board Chair.
Hi, friends. My name is Christy Thompson. I am your DDA Advisory Board Chair. I just want to give you guys a little bit of an update about where we sit, give you guys our annual report. Just to give you a little bit of information about our board, our job is to preserve and enhance downtown and make it a better place for our consumers to come and visit, experience, or live here, or be a patron of our community. So we do have a strong focus on historical preservation. We love to educate and promote our downtown through different events and activities. Our current membership, I would say, is 11 strong. We are a beautiful, passionate group of engaged downtown enthusiasts, business owners, and residents. We meet the second Monday of every month, but in tandem with that, we also have different subcommittees that meet. So they are responsible for different promotions. They're responsible for organization, which is how we educate our downtown. They also do our 501c3 oversight. Our economic vitality group is really responsible for our partnerships, our involvement in downtown business relationships, and keeping those relationships super strong. Our design committee is here to really make downtown Clayton a beautiful place through facade improvements, also through just looking at the historical preservation. To capture our highlights in 2022, I think is really difficult, but I'm going to try to do it. We did our first ever full board retreat, so we really just all met as a group to realign our expectations of each other. We really just took some time to just experience one another and level set our skill sets and see where we matched up in different subcommittees. We did 5 concerts. We hosted Square to Square, 2 family nights, 2 huge downtown bar crawls, which brought between 250 and 150 residents, newcomers, ongoers, and I really feel like we just captured all of downtown in that day, which was amazing, and thank you guys, some of you, for participating. We've also successfully completed over $22,000 in facade grants, which turned into $83,000 in private investments in downtown buildings. So as you're driving through downtown, the improvements to the Clayton Mart signage, all these beautiful things that continue to make downtown a better place, these groups were actively involved in. Also just the volunteer representation, just the people that you see that are just so passionate and engaged. This group really lights that fire and gets them going. So we want to see new people involved in downtown. So the volunteer initiatives this year have been huge. And then we've also raised over $13,000 in sponsorships, which turned into downtown merchandise, which turned into bounce houses and face painters and beer and wine at different concerts. And then as we look forward into the future, we're really heavily focused in taking the feedback and initiatives that Downtown Strategies has given to us and really turning those into projects, looking at some low-hanging fruit, like what can we do very quickly, and then also to just long-term objectives. And then we really want to focus on the economic impact of downtown. Well, right now we are at full capacity and we're busting at the seams. We want to look at the continued growth and how we sustain those relationships through partnering with the Chamber of Commerce, partnering with Last Friday in Clayton, and really activating and keeping that energy alive while we're at our peak. And then we want to continue just collaborating with other advisory boards, so public arts, and how do we really just cultivate these beautiful relationships and just keep that momentum going. We have an amazing and exceptional relationship right now with town staff. So Porter is our liaison, Lydia and Patrick are just exceptional, but our needs from you guys are just that continued oversight and continued direction from you guys about how we can make downtown a better place. We are an advisory board, so sometimes we will advise, what you might not want to hear, what you might want to hear, but we are the voice of your community. So that's our continued direction for you guys. We would love a full-time dedicated resource if possible. And in closing, I would like to tell you that in 2023, you guys can expect amazing things from this group through that partnership with Downtown Strategies, but also through a really empowered, amazing, exceptional board. So they said short and sweet. Here we go. Thank you guys for your time tonight. We appreciate you all.
Thank you. Any council members have comments? Mr. Casey?
Christy, I just want to say I think you're doing a fantastic job, and you're exactly right. That's an awesome team. Liddy and the staff as well. They're passionate, they're hardworking, they have great vision, they have a great future, and there's a lot of positive things going on downtown. We got a lot of momentum. We need to keep that momentum going, and I appreciate what y'all are doing. And I would hope as a council we look at how we can support y'all the best that we can. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, I spent 6 years on the Downtown Development Association, and just to see what it's manifested in now under your leadership and just to continue growth is amazing. I think that's one of the things that makes Clayton just such a viable place where people want to live because of our downtown area, and just thank you guys for what you guys are putting into it.
Absolutely, thank you guys.
I talk to lots of people, lots of newcomers come to the farmers market, and they're always asking about all these events that we have, and I'm always sure to tell them that it's a hardworking group of volunteers with a lot of passion, and hopefully some of them join you. So keep up the good work.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Enjoy your evening.
Yes, I also want to say thank you for everything that you're doing. We are growing, so you guys are staying on top of everything, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
That was a great presentation. It was, I like your energy. You said some key words, collaboration, relationships. One thing that when people stay on islands, they don't accomplish a whole lot except on their island. And I like how your group is working very hard, reaching across to the other partner organizations, and together everybody's achieving so much more, and that's exciting. I like that, and I think you're really right on target for where you need to be, and I'm really thankful to each member of the DDA, and I do agree you've got a strong board now, and a very strong board, and hardworking, diverse, great ideas, and I look forward to what you're going to do in the next year.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're going to do the Neuse River feasibility study with Scott Bernard and Austin Cross.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce y'all to Austin Cross. Austin serves as the Parks and Open Space Grant Coordinator for Johnston County Parks. But that really doesn't capture his role or responsibilities with Johnston County Parks. And tonight he's doing a great job pinch hitting for their director, Adrian O'Neill, who's doing the same presentation, maybe as we speak, to the commissioners as well. But the plan that Austin is getting ready to talk to y'all about, I know many of y'all have heard about it before, it really layers in very nicely with the pedestrian plan that we're going to hear about here right after our presentation. It is intentional that we're both here together. These plans are really in lockstep. And this feasibility study really looks at really more Clayton and beyond than Clayton specific. But there's definitely a vision that the county Parks Department is looking for support from y'all as a body tonight, if you are willing to give it, for this plan so that they can help move it forward and seek funding, seek property donations, seek to purchase property and whatnot to make these trail connections from Clayton to Smithfield and then on toward Goldsboro and beyond.
Good evening, Council. I'm Austin Cross. I'm the grant coordinator with Johnston County Parks and Open Space. And as Scott said, I'm here on behalf of Adrian O'Neill, the Director of Parks and Open Space. So tonight we're just going to talk about the Neuse River feasibility study. We started working on this in May of last year, and we got it in August of this year. It's been adopted by our council. It's been adopted by Smithfield Council, and it's going forward to Wilson Mills, and Selma's already adopted it as well. So this is just the brief introduction. As you know, right in your backyard, you have a state and national trail. The state trail being the Mountains to Sea Trail, and the national trail being the East Coast Greenway. Basically, with our plan, as you can see up on the board, are the preliminary routes will outline where this trail goes from Clayton to Smithfield. And as I found out, actually, that you already have a portion of it getting in there with the NCDOT STIP projects, the 42 section from Front Street to Glen Laurel. that's already a big portion of it being done. And we're looking forward to helping you. I mean, honestly, we really want to make this a partnership. And I really like the statement you made about islands. I think that's what we need to do as a county to make this whole thing happen. This is just the northern portion, but we will have a southern portion as well. It'll split off and go down to Howwoods and Bentonville, and the East Coast Greenway will go down to Benson. So we are one of the only counties in the entire East Coast Greenway and the state that has both a state and national trail going through it. So the pink over here is actually all the parcels that we looked at. I think altogether was 182 parcels. In the Clayton section, which is probably only like 30, I think it was 36 or 40 parcels. And we've actually gotten some word from some of the developers and some of the neighborhoods that they're willing to go ahead and go forward with allowing it going through their property through the open space parcels. The next section is just what you guys already kind of know, how we do greenways, how we do these shared use paths, and how we can make this accomplished. So the first one, the side path, that would be like a good proponent for the Glen Laurel section all the way down to the Vinson Road, I think is where it ends. And beyond that, it'll go down to Powhatan Road. That section will be more of the county. So, you know, the greenways, you guys have this in your backyard. The side path, the next one's Boardwalk. Clayton shouldn't have to worry about Boardwalk. So we should be good there. We're not expecting to have any more crossings of the river up this way. That'll be further down the river, just depending on the parcels we get and the commitment we get from different landowners, which we have gotten a lot of commitment from landowners. Already has gotten some donations, large donations for it, and parcels that we are actually currently acquiring as well. That's what my boss is doing right now, is talking about getting it's 118 acres that'll be dedicated portions of this as well as further development in Johnson County as far as parks and open space. So these are the recommended routes. And what we're kind of hoping in the end is that we can make one of these straight lines work all the way through, but what we're going to probably see is that it's going to be kind of like a spider web. It's going to be just different portions that are connecting to each other. And that'll be great for, for the county and for the residents in Clayton and everyone that comes through, because as I said, with it being a state national trail, we're going to have traffic coming through. Last year, 2 years ago, we had Cycle NC go through, as Clayton knows, and I know a huge portion of it was going to Clayton, and people really enjoyed it from what we did, or from what we heard from people there. So we're hoping to extend that so people don't have to be on the side of the road. They can be on a nice greenway. They can bring in tourism. They can bring in everything that Clayton needs to continue to grow. These are the project phases. So segment A is Clayton. And as I said, the 42 section, that's hopefully already going to be done soon. I think that STIP cycle is till 2028, so it should be done sooner than later. So basically all you have is Glen Laurel going down to Vinson Road, like I said, and you have sidewalk already on portions of it. So what we kind of recommend with it, and what East Coast Greenway recommends, is that it's we're looking at a 12-foot path. It can be whatever it is to start with. That's just the goal in the end. As long as pedestrians get through it, we're just hoping to have the 12-foot path with the divider in the middle, so we can have more safety and prevent, any accidents from happening both on and off the road. Which I saw that there was a bicycle accident on Glen Laurel right on that section, and this would be kind of the perfect way to minimize any more traffic, any more problems in that area. These are our partners. As I said, we already have East Coast Greenway Alliance, Friends of the MST. They've been a big help. Private sector, we're hoping to get more sponsorships and donors in that regard. NCDOT, which I already said is helping you guys out, helping us out hopefully on the roads. State Parks has been great. Johnson County, we're obviously trying to help everyone out. That's our initial goal. And Upper Coastal, RPO, and Campo, they've got the Southeast area study, which I'm sure you guys are all aware of. That's helping us a lot with understanding the bike ped and the demand in the area. And then the municipalities like yourself. So this is a more detailed look into segment A. So as you'll see that the estimated cost, it is high, but I will tell you that that's a 2027 worst case scenario cost. I mean, the contingency is very high. And as I said, you've already got the 42 done. So really that's a major part of it. That's going to be already taken out of that cost in the end. The two other portions, the little dark yellow colors, those are connectors. Those are just what we kind of hope to come with the end result, more or less. But I know those are kind of, they're not necessary, but we want this main segment, the green segment, to kind of come first, hopefully, so we can go ahead and have that continuous string. And on the next one, again, these are just all the route segments. We're just showcasing what everyone's going to be hopefully going for in the end. But as you can see at the beginning of the plan, they have all these different segments that we've laid out. So this isn't the one and done plan. This is just what we're kind of hoping to be the start, and for everyone to understand what we're trying to get this trail done as quickly as possible so we can provide more greenways and parks and open space for the residents of Johnson County. And finally, we just want to, make sure everyone knows that maintenance is a big cost, and I'm sure you're all aware of that with the greenway in your backyard. But it's just something we have to keep in mind and think about whenever we're going forward with this. And for that, that's all I have for you tonight. And if you have any questions, please just let me know.
Any questions? Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion of approval of support.
A motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Okay, next up, we're going to move to public hearings, the Clayton pedestrian plan with Ben Howell.
Good evening. I'm going to be very short for my part because we have Matt Hayes, who is with our consultant, Alta, here to do the bulk of the presentation. But as you know, we've been working on this pedestrian plan now for about 1.5 years. We finished it up earlier this summer, and the steering committee recommended adoption of the plan, I believe, in August. So. And it's been through the planning board, who unanimously also recommended approval. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you all for having us out tonight. Matt Hayes with Alta Planning and Design. So we're just down the road in Durham. Our firm focuses on active transportation planning, so we're really focused on moving people, right, not just cars. So excited to work on this pedestrian plan. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes just doing a walkthrough, a tour, if you will, of the plan, the final draft as it stands today. I think one of the things that's important to mention, it was a grant funded by the NCDOT to do this plan, the Integrated Mobility Division. It's a program that's been around since 2004, funding bicycle pedestrian plans across the state. I think Clayton has maybe benefited from a couple in the previous years, but I also want to give a shout out to the steering committee, who is very engaged in the process. You can see the list of these names here. So good representation from town departments, but also residents as well, who are very energized and focused on having this project be a success. So, just running through a couple of highlights of what we did. And of course, for us, we wanted to, identify a vision and goals for the project. And really, when we're thinking about this and kind of building on Scott and their presentation, it's about safety. It's about transportation for those who are dependent on walking and biking for transportation. We do have some of those residents in Clayton. It's about economic development, quality of life, and really where people are choosing to live are those walkable communities. So, improving health is another element, and really want to think about how we make this all connected, right? We've got sidewalks out there, but there are a few gaps. There might be some intersections that need improvement. How do we get people safely to where they're trying to go? And that was really our focus. So we developed an executive summary that just sort of really describes what the entire plan is all about. I think what we really try to do in this process was make sure that we heard from everyone as much as possible. So we had that engaged steering committee that we met 4 times throughout the process, really trying to understand where we are today, where are we going, and then how do we prioritize that? What are our most important things to tackle in terms of making it safer for walking and biking? We have a portion of the plan where we describe the value of walkable communities. There you can see some examples of this is the impact of being able to have a safe place to walk or bike. And certainly during the pandemic when gyms closed and people had nowhere else to exercise, they needed to get out in their community to exercise. And so the health benefits have been proven. And like I mentioned before, just from an equity standpoint, the importance, and then what people are choosing to do, the idea of being able to walk to school, the idea of being able to walk to a park, to walk downtown, that's something that people are wanting in their day-to-day lives. So, we really bored down and looked at existing conditions, really tried to understand where are your sidewalks today and where are the gaps that are out there. I mean, that's sort of where we start from ground zero. You've obviously got the News River Greenway, which is a huge asset. And so how do, making sure we look at what types of connections we can make to that. And also where are the collisions happening today from a safety standpoint. Nationally, pedestrian severe injuries and fatalities are on the rise over the last 15 to 20 years. So it's definitely an issue we're seeing nationally, and it's the same in North Carolina. So we really wanted to target where are some of these collisions happening, how can we try to prevent them in the future. Really good public response, y'all. Almost 500 responses to the survey. I thought that was really good for the town. We were also out at Fall Fling and the farmers market where, the idea is we're going to intercept people where they are. And so we were able to get a lot of good input back from folks. And most people very much supportive, very interested in more sidewalks, more trails, safer places to walk or bike. Generally speaking, we were, had a lot of support for the project. And so, always focus on the infrastructure side. So we have a chapter on the recommendations for infrastructure, which really we're looking at mostly sidewalks and where we need shared use paths, but also where do we need roadway crossing improvements. So based on, what we heard from the public, our steering committee, and then looking at the types of projects that are going to make a difference where they connect to a destination, connect to an existing sidewalk, we're able to identify a number of these priority projects for the town to consider moving forward. Robertson being an example, Main Street, some crossings of US 70, O'Neill Street came up a lot, Glen Laurel Road. So we tried to get these projects that are going to make a big difference throughout your town. And then obviously connecting to the East Coast Greenway, the Neuse River Trail long-term, and extending that through downtown out south into the county is something that we were prioritizing as well. We also had some guidance to look at these safe routes to schools, to get to your elementary, middle, high school, but also to parks. So what are some of these key connections that can make a difference in making it safer for that access? For a long term, we've got the comprehensive network. So this is really looking at your entire network of your town and where in the long term we would see you needing these recommendations. This will help you in the future when you're looking for funding, maybe looking at development in the future. These are places that were identified as being ideally needing future pedestrian facilities. So there's the infrastructure side that I mentioned, but there's also a programmatic side that people often forget about, some of these other E's that we talk about. And one of those things we wanted to do is try to have this active committee really move forward into a long-term active transportation advisory committee, whatever shape or form that looks like, take that energy and help to keep this plan alive and being carried forward to help Ben and Scott and others in the town be able to implement it. We also took a look from a policy perspective where you've got policies in place where you can consider making some adjustments, looking at best practices in terms of some of those requirements you might have in future development. So this is something to be considering as well. And then finally, implementation. So really trying to break down how this gets done, all the partners that you're going to need through this process, NCDOT being a key partner, and particularly when we're looking at crossing some of their major state roads. So wanted to make sure this was very clear and kind of in the guidance, and also providing a number of different funding sources as well. So you've got a lot of different opportunities to go out and fund these improvements, and we detailed that in the plan as well. And these are just a series of appendices where if you really want to nerd out and see even more, you can take a look at these appendices. But this is some current guidance on funding. This current administration is very much supporting more of these types of projects, funding less in the way of highways currently from a federal level and more in the way of transit, bicycle, pedestrian facilities. So we detail some of those funding resources that you can consider. And then if you want to look in more detail what your residents talked about and we asked them in the survey, there's detailed response there as well. So I believe that is all that I have for tonight. Happy to answer any questions y'all have.
Anyone have any questions? Mr. Casey?
A couple questions that's maybe more towards the town staff, but I know we're doing the downtown master plan and we're doing the UDO rewrite. Is this going to be incorporated into that? Is this being shared with Chad and them?
Yes, this plan, the draft plan, has been shared with the consultants working on the different plans. Ultimately, the goal would be to pull this into our comprehensive transportation plan once we get that underway.
Okay, thank you. I just had a couple comments too, if that's okay. I appreciate this. I think it's fantastic. When you talk about parking issues downtown, when you talk about getting to know your neighbors, walking and just being able to enjoy yourself and just transportation and our pedestrian, I guess, walking is important. But anyway, I saw the list of the 8 priorities too. It looks like there's anywhere between 180, I guess, thousand to most of them are like within the $1 million suggestions. Is there some low-hanging fruit from each one of those suggestions that we can maybe, instead of, I know if we say it's a $3 million project, it may not happen for a long time, but there may be some opportunities where we can capture certain things within that, each one of those priorities where we can do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's kind of in a similar way. We try to put in some conservative estimates, so you've got, looking into the future what these types of things are going to cost. I think so. A lot of our actually a lot of our recommendations are crossing improvements. I think what we costed out was kind of your full-on recommendations for what you might say would be a curb extension or a bulb out where you're actually adding curb or you're dealing with drainage. But there are some things that we could identify fairly quickly where we would call it kind of tactical or short-term quick build infrastructure is what we call it, where maybe you paint a curb extension, maybe you do something with crosswalks that make them more visible. You can bring some art into the equation. I know the city of Durham has done a number of artistic crosswalks, that sort of thing. So there are a number of places you could do what we would call kind of that quick build, where you can get out and do for some pretty low cost, make some improvements to intersections and crossings. So that's what I would recommend looking at.
Yep. Thank you. And just a few more things. Obviously when we ran for council, there's we have a lot of these policies or these studies that we do, and we say they don't need to be put on a shelf. So I'm glad that we're incorporating that to the UDO and the master plan. I really would like, some other action items. I mean, they talk about creating a pedestrian committee. I don't know if we used a steering committee that was part of this process and incorporate them into that, or if I'd like to maybe see us kind of create a active committee and they can focus on some of that low-hanging fruit that you mentioned. Also, I'd like to, these 8 priorities that were listed, I thought they were very well thought out, and they're very important. And maybe we list those in our CIP and see how they rank. And then we get a little bit of a timeline on the process and when we could see actually some of these in their entirety come to fruition. And like I said, I just appreciate what y'all done, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. Okay. As this has been noted as a public hearing, we'll open it up to the public to speak. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward and state your name for the clerk. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and turn it over to council.
Make a motion that we approve the Clayton pedestrian plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Okay, next up we have the Corporate Road Assemblage Conditional Zoning District.
Good evening again. So this is the staff report for the Corbett Road Assemblage Conditional Zoning District and Master Plan. The request is to rezone a number of properties shown on the map there from RE zoning to conditional zoning residential. The conditional zoning will allow, as proposed, would allow up to 750 units, is a mixture of single-family homes, townhomes, and multifamily units with a maximum density of 10 units per acre. The property is located off Corbett Road, southwest of Amelia Church Road, and as you see there on the screen, the property is approximately 86 acres in size. Provided on the screen here is the proposed bubble plan or master plan. As you can see up in the top right corner, that reddish peach color, that would be the proposed multifamily, and the remainder of the property would be the split between single-family detached and single-family attached units. Again, I've already mentioned the proposed uses and density. It would be accessed at 4 access points on Corbett Road and would also have connectivity to the Copper District. The water and sewer would be provided by the town of Clayton, and electricity would be provided by Duke Energy, and these properties do require annexation. Currently, they are surrounded by RE zoning and primarily single-family detached homes. The proposed unit mix is 325 multifamily units and 385 single-family homes and townhomes, and the dimensional standards are shown there on the screen for the single-family attached and detached homes. The applicant is proposing to construct 3 full movement and 1 right-in, right-out access points on Corbett Road, as well as connectivity into the Copper District. And then the transportation impact analysis also included recommendations for improvements at Amelia Church Road, Corbett Road intersection, and the Springbrook Avenue NC42 intersection. And these improvements are included in condition 15. The project will comply with Town of Clayton stormwater ordinance. Public water is available on Corbett Road, and the public sewer will connect to the new pump station in the Copper District with electric service from Duke Energy. They're proposing 20-foot wide type C landscape buffers, as well as a 20-foot wide street yard buffer along Corbett Road frontage with 10 to 15-foot wide street yard buffers on the public roads interior to the development, with street trees planted at 1 per 40 linear feet, meeting the Unified Development Code requirements. They've also proposed some architectural standards, including limitation of materials, as well as a minimum of 25% masonry on the primary street-facing facades. The 2045 growth plan does call for this area to be high-density residential up to 10 units an acre, and it calls for a mix of single-family detached homes, townhomes, and multifamily units. So this proposal is consistent with 2045 growth plan. The current zoning of RE permits very low-density residential uses. However, the proposed conditional district permits high-density residential uses. But again, this property is directly adjacent and will be connected to the Copper District development. The applicant is also proposing to connect to public water and extend public sewer to serve the development. The area is currently a mix of commercial, office, and residential uses, and the proposed development would provide a mix of housing and density transition near the hospital and Copper District development. The proposed development would be served by currently would be served by West Clayton Elementary, Clayton Middle, and Clayton High School. Both West Clayton Elementary and Clayton High are on the current CAP schools list for Johnston County. And the development will be accessed by Corbett Road and then through connectivity to the Copper District development. The Clayton Community Park and Clayton Community Center are nearby, and the development will be served by an extension of sewer connecting into the Copper District pump station. The development is subject to the town's wastewater allocation policy, and if council decides to approve this development tonight, the next action would be approval of a wastewater allocation. Public water is available on Corbett Road, and the development will follow the town's stormwater ordinance, and all town ordinances, procedures, and approvals will be followed. The development is proposing a 20-foot wide landscape buffer with opaque screening to provide, to mitigate impact on adjoining property owners, as well as make improvements to existing public road network and provide connectivity and extension of public utilities. And with the imposed conditions, no detriment to the general public is expected. You'll see there the master plan approval criteria on your screen, and staff believes that the applicant has met this criteria through the master plan narrative, and the proposed conditions. Considerations for town council include that you shall consider recommendation of the planning board and planning director, as well as adopt a written statement of reasonableness and consistency as part of your consideration of this project. Town council shall approve with conditions, or deny this conditional zoning district. However, any changes to the condition the applicant must agree to. And ultimately, if approved, the conditional zoning district master plan and narrative will be recorded with Johnston County. And they run with the land and do not expire. Staff recommends approval of the proposed conditional zoning district master plan, subject to the 17 recommended conditions of approval in your staff report. Planning board, at the time of planning board, there were 16 conditions. They recommended approval unanimously of the development with those 16 conditions, with the inclusion of transportation improvements at Springbrook Drive and NC 42, and at Amelia Church Road and Corbett Road in condition 15. And then staff added condition 16 after the planning board meeting to require annexation of the properties into the town limits. And the planning board found the project to be consistent with the comprehensive growth plan and recommends the statement of reasonableness found at the end of the presentation. Following on the next several screens are recommended conditions of approval. Again, the first 3 conditions are our standard conditions. Condition 4 is the maximum number of units and density. Condition 5 is relating to the buffer, the landscape buffer around the exterior of the development. Condition 6 is relating to the street yards. Condition 7, the applicant has proposed to dedicate a minimum of 13 acres of the development to open space, as well as provide some amenities, which they list the different amenities that may be provided here in the condition. Condition 8 is a list of uses that will be specifically prohibited within the district. Condition 9 is the requirement for 25% masonry on the primary street-facing facade for the single-family and multifamily buildings. Condition 10 is to address architectural variability. And condition 11 is to address, to ensure that sustainable high-efficiency products and/or appliances will be provided as part of the development. This is related to the wastewater allocation scoring system. Condition 12 is a requirement to provide at least one amenity listed there. And condition 13 is related to public water service and a requirement for a master interconnect meter. Condition 14 is discusses covers the street network and cross connections shown on the master plan and limitations to changes to that. And condition 15 is the requirement for the transportation improvements. These are all subject to a phasing plan that must be approved by both the town and NCDOT prior to the first site plan. And then condition 16 is the annexation condition, and condition 17, again, is our standard condition that if anything conflicts between master plan narrative, and the conditions shall control. And with that, you'll see on your screen the recommended statement of consistency and reasonableness. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is also here and prepared to present.
Any questions of staff? Mr. Casey?
Ben, in condition number 9 and condition number 10, it mentions the materials for single-family, detached, and multifamily. I didn't really notice anything where it mentions a single-family attached. It mentions detached, and multifamily doesn't mention, I guess, anything regarding the material or the facade for the
So
single-family.
So for condition 9, townhomes are still considered single family. So you'll see actually in condition 9, it states it applies to construction of new single family and multifamily buildings. So that would require that masonry requirement on both detached homes as well as townhomes and the multifamily buildings. Condition 10, because it can be difficult to have architectural variability with townhomes, those are excluded from that architectural variability condition. And so that condition 10 just addresses the single family homes to ensure that that single family homes beside each other, across the street from each other, are different in appearance.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? Okay, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Dean Penny, and I'm here representing the applicant, Craig Davis Properties. Tonight, I have with me Craig Davis and Al Barnes, and then also my team of experts with Kimberly Horne. And Kimberly Horne is going to handle the bulk of this presentation, but I wanted to take just a couple of minutes and make a couple of opening statements, and then, of course, we'll be available for questions. As most, if not all of you know, I've lived in Clayton my entire life. And for the last 35 plus years, I've lived just off of Corbett Road. So tonight's projects, along with all of the associated projects that we're tying with Copper District, is not just a business deal for me, it's personal. And I'm going to live with the results just like the rest of my neighbors down Corbett Road and everybody adjacent. In many ways, I've got the most at risk. And so with that, I'm going to do everything within my power to do what I think is in the best interest of our community. And you've got my personal commitment on that. What you have in your packet, Ben has described very well, as a project that is an extension of the original Copper District master plan that we rezoned last year. This is one more piece in the puzzle of the larger picture here, all of which are needed to make this a fully vibrant mixed-use community. The pieces you're looking at tonight allow us the additional housing options to create the density that will allow us to drive the retail that everybody wants, the amenities, the 21st century amenities that everybody wants. So as part of the Copper District, we're making a significant number of investments in infrastructure, water, sewer, streets, pedestrian pathways, and those kinds of things. But in addition to that, we're envisioning an opportunity for a network of a number of civic-type amenities within Copper District. We've discussed with town staff a number of things like a library, different parks, a hotel, a school. All of that is in our broader vision of the entire district. But to pull that off, we need a base of residents that can help drive the need for all that within this community, and that's what the project tonight helps build toward. This project is completely consistent with the town's long-range comprehensive master plan, as Ben has alluded to. The density, the type of development, the vision is completely consistent with that long-range growth plan. So you're going to see from Kimberly Horne's presentation that within this, we're incorporating things that will help enhance the area, not just for the Copper District residents and businesses, but also for the residences in the adjacent neighborhoods. Things like vehicular access from Corbett out to 42 that don't exist today. The ability to get on bike and ped paths and walk to places like parks or like, to get a coffee or to go out to eat, groceries, those kinds of things. So our vision is smart, thoughtful growth in a tight-knit community with true mixed-use vibrancy, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly Horne. Obviously, I'm around. I thank you for your consideration of our application. We look forward to discussing it.
Thank you, Dean, and good evening, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to present this case to you tonight. Haven't been as honored and as excited to bring a case, a rezoning case that is, as has been referenced earlier, so consistent with the town's comp plan, consistent with the vision that began with Copper District that was approved last year, close to this time. And in many ways, as Dean alluded, that this is a continuation, an extension of that development program in this important gateway for the town of Clayton. So, and I appreciate working with staff throughout this process. And just to formally introduce ourselves, Richard Brown with Kimberly Horne, 421 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh. Got with me tonight a few experts from our team, Richard Adams, traffic engineer, Jordan Brewer, civil engineer, along with Austin Rowland, who is a landscape architect, and all involved in the project. And really to not dwell or to represent all of the information that Ben walked through very thoroughly and very well, but just to build on a few things that throughout this process we found important to staff, important to the planning board, important to the neighbors through the neighborhood meetings. And we just want to offer some emphasis on a few of those things tonight. So just to bring us from the overall context that Dean built on to start with back to the subject area, just want to remind us of the zoning boundary for the case that's in front of you is for this, what we're calling the Corbett assemblage, has been noted 86 plus acres that we have assembled here that are pertinent to this rezoning. And of that, our proposal is 750 total units, as has been noted. Consistent with the comprehensive plan in terms of density, I wanted to just underscore the actual density that we're proposing on this project is 8.68 units per acre, so well within and under even the density guidance of the comprehensive plan. And we feel like we're doing that in a way of land uses that provide a mix that's of different housing types, different price points, different income levels, and different demographics that start with the multifamily, the townhomes, the different variety of single family detached housing is a real strong cross-section of housing opportunities here that we intend to deliver under this zoning framework that will achieve that important land use policy that we find in the comprehensive plan. Just to build on a couple of those things that Ben has already really presented, but we feel like this plan just highlights or highlights of this plan. It also preserves the town of Clayton's character, allowing the growth opportunities of Land Use Policy 2. Land Use Policy 3 encourages a range of housing types, as I just mentioned, in varying lot sizes. Number 4, it also provides a safe and well-maintained, 4 safe and well-maintained neighborhoods. I think we'll see that as we elaborate a little bit on the master plan itself, coming in the next couple of slides. And then the town's future land use map, it designates this property again as high density. We have put together a plan that we feel like is not trying to max out this site, but leverage some of the environmental features, some of the locational aspects of it, some of the transitional aspects from NC 42 back to Corbett Road with some sensitivity to the surrounding adjacent developments. We feel, again, excited to bring forth a plan that balances all the important aspects of the plan. And before I forget, did just want to mention again the appreciation that we've had for working with Ben and the planning and engineering staff through this process. We have spent a lot of time together, probably more than they want to have spent with us. But I think that process that we started back coming up on 9 months ago, developing a plan to bring forth to the town, massaging that somewhat prior to our April submittal to get to this point, and along the way getting neighborhood input and trying to respond appropriately to some of those things has resulted in a plan that, again, we're proud to bring forward. One of the things that we thought was important just to touch on tonight is early on in that process, our environmental team at Kimley Horne did a environmental delineation on this property within the assemblage and identified all of the streams and wetland features, the sensitive environmental areas that are a part of this property. Not only to just identify them, but hopefully to work a master plan around them with as minimal impacts to those, and really trying to leverage and respect those environmental features to the maximum extent that could be practical. As a part of that, we also our team evaluated the protected species that are on the Johnson County list of protected species, and also the historic resources, a desktop review of all the historic resources that are a part of the county and state requirements, and found no issues with any of those. The environmental features that are on the property are mapped here for you. And as we go into the master plan, hopefully you'll see and agree that those are balanced well in the plan itself. Another important topic that's always important to all of us with the town, the applicant, and the neighbors included is the traffic itself. And we did submit a TIA along with this project that was reviewed by the town and NCDOT. As I mentioned, I've got Richard Adams here. I'd like him to come up now and just elaborate for you on a few of what these improvements mean and what volumes sort of dictate these improvements that we've put forward.
Thank you, Richard. Again, Richard Adams, also with Kimley Horne, transportation engineer, and glad to be here. And I don't know that I'm going to need to advance a lot here, but so as Richard said, we did develop a traffic impact analysis for the project in close coordination with both the DOT as well as your town staff. We looked at a couple of scenarios. One, with both the North Carolina 42 improvements, which are all programmed and we're hoping to see soon, along with the Copper District development and the entire build out of that. And then another scenario without either of those, just to kind of look into, well, what would happen if those things didn't happen? And then, as was previously mentioned, 4 access points are planned on Corbett Road, 3 full movement and 1 right in, right out. In addition, something that's really important is that this development, in conjunction with the Copper District, creates a network of streets connecting Corbett Road over 242 and access to multiple signals, both for the developments but also for existing folks living off of Corbett Road. So we're providing options to everybody out there for access. One of the things that came out of that was a couple of improvements. One would be a right turn, and I'll go over these on a figure as well, but we did determine that a right turn lane was needed on Amelia Church Road at Corbett Road. We thought that was important for several reasons, so that is proposed as a required recommendation, as well as an additional lane, a southbound lane on Springbrook. That's, the access coming out of the medical area there at Highway 42. And this is in addition to all the improvements recommended as a part of the Copper District. So a great deal of improvements all along there at the 42 intersections. With all of those improvements combined, we do project acceptable levels of service at all the intersections studied. And then that TIA was reviewed and approved by both the DOT and town staff. And the last thing I wanted to mention kind of as an overview is that we did take a look at, with all this development, what is kind of the available capacity left? Because we certainly know other development could be built over time. And we did determine, Amelia Church, for instance, might be considered somewhat of a limiting point. And we did determine that there was some available capacity left on Amelia Church after full development of everything we're talking about here. So let's see if I can do this right. And I may not be able to. I may call my partners here to help me. There we go. All right. So I'm going to go quickly through the two scenarios I mentioned, dwelling more on what we're calling scenario 2 here. But scenario 1 is when we looked at the possibility that, all right, the new development, the Corbett Road development being built without the Copper District development or the DOT improvements on Highway 42. And so we have a suite of improvements recommended on 42 shown here in green. I won't go through all these, but suffice to say some additional improvements are needed at the two major intersections on 42 that would be accessed if this scenario were to come to pass. And then likewise on Corbett Road, we would obviously have the 4 access points I mentioned, along with the right turn lane I mentioned on Amelia Church Road. The kind of more likely scenario that we're all expecting would be that, of course, both developments are developed and that the Highway 42 improvements come along with the DOT project. And so here there's a lot going on. I'll just kind of hit it at a high level. The DOT improvements are shown in blue. The Copper District improvements, which a whole bunch of turn lanes and things at the Copper District access points, are shown in red. And then the additional improvement that I mentioned on Springbrook, the additional lane required there because of the extra, development of the Corbett Road parcels, is shown in green. And then likewise, this is kind of the same thing you saw before. Again, for that scenario, we still have the 4 access points on Corbett Road, as well as the right turn lane I mentioned on Amelia Church at Corbett Road. So that's, again, a high-level look at the recommended improvements, which, again, have been agreed to by DOT and town staff. But we're here, obviously, to answer any questions about transportation. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for reminding me that there was a remote available to me as well. So probably spend a little, just to point out a few things on the master plan itself, and hopefully you can see that well on your screen. But just a few things to point out that, we developed along the way. This shows you a picture of what one thing that Richard mentioned previously, sort of just thinking from the outside in, the 4 access points off of Corbett, the interconnectivity that we're setting up with the Copper District street infrastructure will allow internal disbursement of traffic that doesn't exist today. And as you can see, throughout the vehicular network of the plan, both vehicular and pedestrian, we're setting this up for potential future interconnectivity throughout this whole quadrant, depending on and based upon the way that the rest of the adjoining properties in the quadrant develops out. Now, hopefully there will be opportunities to develop this in a smart way. We believe that this infrastructure network sets up extremely well for that, and also while serving and providing sufficient level of infrastructure for the phase at hand or the development by phase. Also along with that is, Ben alluded to it earlier, 13 acres of this 86 acres is being dedicated to open space. That's 13 acres of total green variations of open space, including the center area of the plan itself being sort of what we see as the neighborhood amenity, that open space, trying to leverage some of the existing assets of stormwater or existing ponds and maybe recreate those and reshape those and using them as stormwater ponds, but also as feature amenities throughout the development. Although we haven't done a significant amount of engineering to be able to commit to that, we're showing those on this plan as our intent to develop around those existing features. Also, the environmental that you can see showing up in dark green on this plan overlays into the plan itself and shows and demonstrates how we're trying to minimize any impacts to the existing streams and wetlands that are largely in the southwest quadrant of this property assemblage and the northwest corner as well. And then throughout that, some lesser environmental features, but trying to work with what the site is giving us. On the edges, one thing that we heard and really responded to, I feel like, throughout the neighborhood meetings and the input that we got from the community was just the edges themselves and what the sensitivities that we all have there. So I think starting with the land uses and the appropriate transitions that we're showing has been pointed out. We've identified the northern quadrant for multifamily, or the higher density of what we're proposing here. And then as it transitions and graduates to the south and back over to the edge of the Copper District, particularly where there are adjoining properties outside of this district, transitioning that through a lower density, appropriate land uses being townhomes, and then as it even gets closer down towards 70 and back toward the southern quadrant of the site, a mixture of detached single family, and then as we graduate back closer to the edge of Copper District, there will be an increase in a variety of product types that could be townhomes, multifamily type units that will correspond well with the plan that was approved for that district. So we feel like the land uses are part of that sensitivity that bears out in this plan. A 20-foot wide type C buffer provided at the district boundary of the entire district boundary where there is a residential property. So that is a 6-foot opaque buffer, whether it be a fence or berm, screening, a combination of those will be provided at all of the perimeter edges except for where we abut the Copper District, where there will be a lot more of a seam there or a seamlessness there with that district. Richard spoke to the connectivity. I do want to point out that as much as we, as strongly as we feel that a good vehicular connection is important to this development, the pedestrian network is of equal importance. And I will hopefully be able to show you in this exhibit, highlighting that throughout the district itself, that a pedestrian network flows along. You may have to squint a little bit to see it well, but along the southern street that runs through the center of the development, and then up through, sorry, very wide, but I'll try to put my pointer on it to follow, but up through this section and over across here through the center green space, and providing a lot of pedestrian connectivity through there. And then as it gets along this north-south street through development, connecting to the multifamily. So, and then out to Corbett Road is our primary spine. That will exist in the form of sidewalks, multi-use paths, and interior greenway, a private greenway system that will run through. That doesn't limit it from other connectivity, but I think important to all of this is that it connects back to the town's greenway system that is expanded on through the Copper District under that zoning case out to NC 42, where that 10-foot wide multi-use path greenway system runs along 42. So intending to connect back to that and provide, build on connectivity in that way. The last thing I'll say and then open it up to your comments and questions is just to reinforce, as Ben pointed out, some of the architectural standards that we've crafted into conditions and offered are in direct response to some of the desire for high quality and ensuring a high quality mix of product types. And that is demonstrated through the masonry, brick, stone material on the front facades, stone, wood, hardy plank, those higher quality materials, also through the high efficiency products that we are committing to some of, or a list of within the narrative and the conditions themselves to elevate that quality from a sustainability approach. And then the architectural variability, just with this, particularly with the single family detached, is to provide variability, or just with our intent to ensure that our intent is met, that there will not be a similar home right, next to or across the street from each other. So providing some variability into what we intend to produce with this development. I will close our presentation here with just a couple of things that we agree with staff. I won't go back through all of the master plan approval criteria, but agree with their assessment that we meet that. Agree with staff's assessment of consistency, and that's all in your packet, and happy to address those as you have questions about it. But again, hopefully you find this as exciting as we find it to bring forward to the town of Clayton, and we certainly look forward to your comments and your decision and your questions. Thank you.
Questions or comments for the applicant? Mr. Everett.
My only question is how much width is with the environmental buffers? Or how wide are they?
So on stream buffers, typically we have 50-foot wide buffers. In our case, the wetlands that exist on this property that are shown on this map are encompassing of any stream buffers that we have. So essentially the edges or the boundaries that you see of the dark green or the medium green areas here and here, we stay outside of the boundaries of all of those and do not intend to impact those at this point with the plan. Does that help? Okay.
Any others? Mr. Sims.
Yes, could I see Mr. Adams, please? While he's coming up, first of all, I'm excited about the project. I mean, just excited as you guys are. I think that it has the opportunity to bring a lot, not just to Clayton, but to Johnson County as a whole. With that being said, you mentioned that, you said that with the improvements to the road, you said that it would be able to sustain some more capacity on Amelia Church, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes.
How much capacity, and are you measuring that back from, I take it that you're measuring that back from Barber Mill Road?
Generally, between Corbett Road and North County 42 was the area I was thinking of. DOT does have a count station in that area, and that's part of why I picked that location. Just to give you, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, and we did look at all these various intersections that I was talking about, and none of them were kind of at the bubble of tripping into a bad level of service, so you could look at that and say there's some additional capacity. But specific to Amelia Church, another way to look at it would be taking that average daily traffic, which their last measurement was 7,000 vehicles a day, and then our project, specifically the Corbett Road project, would add about 1,500 if you look at the TIA and look at daily traffic volumes, not the hourly. Those are much lower numbers, obviously. But if you look at the daily traffic, that'd be another 1,500, so that takes you to about 8,500 vehicles a day. And then DOT has their level of service manual, which defines capacities for roads like this, for a 2-lane road, about 10-foot lanes out there. And that's at about, I think it's about 12,000. Yeah, right at about 12,000 is the capacity for a road of just a 2-lane road with about that width of laneage in this part of the state. So you can see we'd be at about 8,500 vehicles a day, capacity about 12,000. So that kind of gives you an order of magnitude of where we would be from a capacity standpoint. So I hope that's helpful.
Well, if you can kind of school me on, so what's when you say the capacity, you gave 1,500 a couple times, so how do you trigger that number of vehicles? Is based upon what?
Right. The capacity, the capacity of the road is defined by DOT. That's the 12,000 number I was mentioning, okay? That's the overall capacity of that piece of Amelia Church Road. The actual traffic count, the most recent count they did, was about 7,000 vehicles a day. So you can see today, they're at 7,000, capacity is 12,000, okay? And then we are adding about 1,500 trips a day to that road. And that's based on a whole series of calculations. It's based on the expected trips per day per household, and then it's based on the percent of those trips that we expect to go up to Amelia Church, because obviously some of them are just going to go straight out to 42, most of them are, but a certain percent will take Corbett Road to Amelia Church and then go to 42 or wherever from there. And so we have all that in the study, and so we looked at those percent distribution and came up with the daily traffic that we would generate on that piece of Amelia Church, and that comes out to about 1,500 vehicles per day. Does that make sense? And I can go into more detail if you'd like.
No, sir, for the sake of time, no, that's okay. But I guess you're saying per household also in that formula generates the trip.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And just for a little more detail on that, average household for a full single-family household is about 10 trips a day. And then for a multifamily, between 5 to 6 trips a day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the whole understanding as far as the total impact to what would be too much, because what you're saying here with these improvements, I guess, at 750 homes we're looking at putting in their households, what would be like unacceptable?
You mean like how many more households might trigger?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you could, again, you could look at each intersection differently and run a really complicated analysis, and I obviously don't have that. But coming back to the Amelia Church example, I can tell you that, if we're at, say, 8,500, 8,500 as our trips on that road, our capacity is at 12, you could say, another 300 homes still ought to be able to be accessed off of that road without, needing to widen Amelia Church even further. Does that make sense? And again, these
yes, that's kind of where I'm going.
Order of magnitude
trying to understand.
Okay. All right, great.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer.
Any others? Mr. Casey.
Excuse me. Well, hear me a minute. Excuse me. I want to thank first the applicant. I want to thank the staff, and I want to thank the community that's give feedback about this project. When I look at this project, I look at it as a kind of overall big picture with the Copper District and what the overall vision is. So a lot of my questions may kind of be related to that. I guess based on last year, there was about 120 single-family homes in Pod 5 and Pod 6. My understanding was that, the heart of this development was going to come off of 42, and as you got further into the community, you'd have more of the single-family executive-style housing that would be present. Can you kind of, I need to elaborate a little bit about this. Can you talk about a little bit more kind of how it's feeding in from the existing copper district that's already been approved in that, single executive-style housing, kind of going back towards the back part?
Okay. Yes, sure. Master plan is probably our best exhibit to point to, but essentially, as you referred, along the gravity that is NC 42, that's where our commercial and mixed use, the most intense development that we'll have. And as that graduates back, of course, we'll have a mix of residential, vertically integrated mixed use residential in those product types as well. But we feel, again, from a land use standpoint, it's an appropriate transition and a more sensitive transition as we do graduate, to your point, back towards the east, back towards the Corbett Road direction, that there's an existing natural feature here in the middle that is a pond that is jurisdictional, and it kind of feeds into an ecological, environmentally sensitive system that again comes up into the green space that the councilman was referring to earlier, and that's a natural transition from that sort of hustle and bustle neighborhood, if you'll call it that, or think of it in that term, in those characteristics, as it bridges across the pond stream features itself on both the north and the south. That becomes a transition into a neighborhood that encourages slower traffic, maybe narrower street cross section through there, that it, from this on-street parking facility. So from a land use standpoint, to sort of wrap the addressing of your question, that will be a residential zone on that eastern side of the pond. And we feel like, now there is going to be some rework of this seam that we feel like both master plans will provide the flexibility for. That could be of a single family or an attached single family variety is just what we're contemplating right now. But we feel like, again, the decisions that we've made about this edge correspond very well to that sort of medium density product type, really lower to medium density product type. And as it graduates even further, the density, particularly down here around these areas, is of that detached single family variety and a lower density of the entirety of the density. And then as it graduates up to the north, it gets to moderate density to a higher density on the multifamily. Hopefully that answers your question, but that's how we see it blending together.
Yes, thank you. That was helpful, and I'm sorry my voice is obviously out. Not as many questions tonight, unfortunately, for the rest of the council members. A couple other things real quick. I know in the other plan it was talked about there was 6 pods, and I think pod 3 was going to be the first one. How is this project? Is it being phased in? Is this going to be one of the first projects? This Corbett Road assemblage is going to be one of the first projects, or pod 3 still going to be the first? I mean, how is it kind of phasing in with the rest of the whole project?
Well, I'll answer that, and if Dean wants to kind of clarify from the developer standpoint any more recent, just high level though, this infrastructure is getting ready to go under construction any day now. So the infrastructure that will organize the pods for the Copper District will be in place ideally in the next year and a half, as soon as possible within that time frame. I think what we can tell you just in terms of phasing of this plan, I do have a phasing exhibit that might help walk through that a little. Okay, so as you might be able to tell, phase 1 of this assemblage is contemplated to start and begin up here, where it isn't as heavily infrastructure dependent. as this infrastructure is getting constructed at the same time. Ideally, we would come in as soon as we're ready with a development plan for this property. So that would be phase one, and then phase two of the assemblage itself, and then it'll be multiple phases that will be included in a subdivision plan. But this is our best guess today as how we see the development itself being able to support the internal infrastructure investment that will come along with this property. But essentially, maybe an important point to your good question is this internal street will be built in phase one of the Copper District, essentially back to the property line. And by the time that we come in with phase two of this development, we intend to connect Corbett Road fully to NC 42 through that connection. So then everything can build and expand from a network standpoint off of that. Would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll just add, so you can see, obviously, the street infrastructure is part of the first phase of construction. I think part of your question, Mr. Casey, is related to the vertical nature of projects. And the multifamily you see listed in the phase one here would be one of the first vertical projects out of the ground. We are still envisioning at least one, if not two, vertical projects within the core Copper District overlapping and being simultaneous to that.
A couple other things. I saw on the presentation it said that it was a Duke Energy electric project. Has there been any consideration for it to be a town of Clayton, if that's even possible?
We are certainly open to that. I think we have been in numerous discussions with town staff about how to make that work. If the town, I know there's some jurisdictional battles going on, but if the town is able to work it out where they can supply power, we are certainly open to that.
Okay, thank you. A couple other things and I'll be done. I know this, obviously they're talking about expanding Highway 42. I know this project's going to, have an impact with that. Has there been any discussions with the DOT, town staff about the expansion of 42, maybe expediting that to help mitigate some of the traffic impacts from 42?
From our perspective, we are talking to everybody that'll listen, including legislators. And so we're pushing. I know the town has been in conversations as well. The latest we've heard with DOT is that it is in for right away in 27 and construction start in 29. We are certainly hopeful that we can twist some arms to accelerate that. But, it's going to be up to DOT and the legislature. So.
Well, thank you. If there's any way we can help as council, please let us know.
We will. And one of the things I will say is we are putting together some bullet talking points that we will certainly share with town staff and council to help make sure we're all on a united front.
Thank you. And finally, obviously, there's a lot of neighborhood concern regarding the capacity of the schools, existing schools in the surrounding area. So can you kind of elaborate how you've tried to address that with this?
Absolutely. In our broader vision, we want a school. We have already had 2 conversations with Johnston County Public Schools. We have a meeting with them next week. So we are pursuing that option. Simultaneous to that, we are looking at the possibility of either private or charter. And we're going to wait and see how that works out with the public first. And some of this is going to have to be worked in to land adjacencies as we continue to assemble properties, but we have a vision and a location where we think it would best suit, and so we're exploring those options with the school system.
Okay, thank you. And this probably didn't come out the way it should earlier. I just want to appreciate you all, town staff, for this, and I want to appreciate the neighbors, the surrounding citizens that have provided their feedback. I feel like this area is inevitably going to grow just because of the location of the highways and the streets and the widening of 42. And so I appreciate, what you guys and your vision for this, so thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, as this has been noted as a public hearing, we'll now open the floor for public comment. Please step to the podium and state your name for the clerk.
Evening. My name's Paul Taparak. My concerns are with the light pollution coming off this development and also the egress and ingress on Amelia Church, and also with the loss of habitat for the critters that live in that area. I'm just concerned that there's going to be a decrease in the property values in the neighborhoods because of the high density of this property. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Sherry True. I'm just going to review just a little brief statement that I kind of prepared. I think this was read last time we had a town council meeting. But I'm Sherry Truitt. I live on 270 Corbett Road, so I'm kind of in the little grayed out area right there. So I have a lot to lose. Mr. Penny has said he'd been out there for 35 years. I've been out there 55 years. So Clayton is known for its variety of living styles, especially for the charming small town feel. We moved to Clayton because of this rural feel and still, remaining within driving distance to the city of Raleigh and RTP for shopping. This high-density development will change the basic character of the area and take away one of the unique qualities of Clayton. When my dad first bought the property on 1552, as it was called back then, there was nothing but farmland and woods. It was a dead-end dirt road with only 5 houses. Sometimes during the 80s, the road was paved and named Corbett Road, and the first subdivision, Woodland Trails, was created, followed shortly by Lee Chase. Over the years, other subdivisions were built, and now there are over 200 residential houses. Now, Corbett Road is a dead-end street. Now, the proposed rezoning of these would allow for a large multi-family complex, you heard it, 750 units homes, which will all dump that traffic on that little dead-end road. I know they think that cutting the roads out to 42 is going to help, but if all the kids are going to school towards your right, who's going to go all the way through all of that to drive down to 42 Highway? It just doesn't make sense to me. The existing wastewater treatment plant in Clayton is nearing the end of its usefulness and capacity. The property in question is currently mostly forested with existing ponds. There's a lot of many animals out there, like I said before. There's the Pleiadian woodpecker, there's a red cockatied woodpecker. I've seen great horned owls out there. I've seen several species of hawks. And all of these are protected under the Migratory Bird Act. They're also protected under the Endangered Species Act. I haven't seen any mention of those. So we're taking 86 acres and we're giving them, 13, a little bit of wetland? That doesn't make sense to me. It is also a natural habitat for several species of bats. There are 17 species of bats in North Carolina, 4 federally listed as endangered or threatened, and 10 are listed in the species of the greatest conservatory need. I've seen them at night. I've seen them roosting in the pine forest over there. Right, probably where the pond is, where they're putting the multi-complex up there, I see them go from pond to pond at night. So all those woods are going to be gone. I'm also concerned about storm runoff. So the little grayed out area there, my parents had a dairy goat farm there many years ago. And we had a lot of animals there, and I know there's been some people had issues with the wastewater runoff on Short Johnson Road. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. The schools are at capacity. So in summary, this is a small town and it's growing way too fast. I don't think the infrastructure can support this amount of growth. Proper storm water control need to be looked at, and I know that developers are trying to do this, but I just don't see how we're going to get a new school system when they're currently capped. I think rezoning without the proper infrastructure in place to support this growth is insanity. I think we reached a point where it's no longer that quaint little small town that we I wanted to move here to. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and turn it over to council.
Just comment to the other council members. I do have some concerns. I do feel that the applicant has addressed them as far as with traffic. I still look at the 42 in Amelia Church with the oncoming things as far as the rest of the Copper District. And also, along with, if you remember, across the street out there for the hospital, they're going to be doing addition over there. So I think it's not as parity with them as far as with just DOT at that 42 in Amelia Church Road there. We need to take a look at that as far as with DOT in whatever aspect that looks like. But I think addressing it now is going to be big of whatever ways that we have to do that to kind of get that on the radar. But I feel that with these things that they have talked about, they have addressed as far as the traffic needs for that area.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Casey.
First off, I want to appreciate Paul and the lady man for speaking. I know one thing, I've done a little bit of research, it's called the Dark Skies Initiative. I don't know if that's something that the applicant would be interested in looking in regarding, like, I guess, light pollution, but that's something pretty interesting. I used to hunt and fish in that area as a kid. I think when the Highway 70 bypass came through, and just the ease of ability to get to and from at that particular location, that just made that area just prime and ripe for development. Unfortunately, or fortunately or unfortunately, that's just kind of my thoughts. I definitely think Clayton's growing too fast. I wish we could slow it down a little bit. But in this situation, I think with this project, it makes sense. I think you got to look at the bigger picture here. And I appreciate Dean talking about, the overall vision for the Copper District, because it is going to bring some things that citizens and the community has been asking for: more jobs, Class A commercial space, retail, groceries, some of the things that we've been losing out on a lot to our neighboring communities. So when we look at this particular assemblage, we have to think about the bigger picture here and what, some of the amenities and some of the benefits that will hopefully the town will be able to take advantage of and enjoy because of it. And I trust that the staff will continue to work with the applicant through this whole process. So I have no qualms with it. I think that the applicant's kind of proven his point with what he's trying to do. He's gotten recognition from the Johnstonian. He's gotten recognition from the Triangle Business Journal about this project and the quality that he's trying to bring to this community. So I appreciate that, and I have no more questions or comments.
Ms. Archer.
Thank you, and I agree with both of my council members up here who have commented so far. It is a lot to take in. This is quite a big project, and for some people, it's very exciting, me included. For others, it's kind of scary, and it's big, and it's different, and I can understand that as well. But as I've looked over the past Copper District that was approved, I've looked over what we have here, and I take it all in the big picture. It really strikes me as balanced. And as I've read through this, they're attempting to work with the school system to address our schools. They've worked with our current land use plan to deal with density and how that fits in with the proximity to nearby highways. For the existing residents in the area, they have proposed the 20-foot buffers. Some of those are going to include opaque features. Some of that is going to be street yards, which are really great for helping kind of provide a transition there. And so I think that's important as well. Obviously, traffic is a big concern, and that's not just with this project. That's overall. I do have concerns, particularly with that intersection with Corbett and Amelia Church. However, as I have sat up here, those traffic impact analyses that they do, a lot of data goes into those, a lot of analysis. It's all completely over my head, but I know there is a science to it. And so that's really the tool that as we sit up here, we have to trust. And what they've done, that traffic impact analysis, they've agreed through conditions in the plan to meet those requirements. As a regular resident, I get it. It's hard for me to wrap my head around adding all these new residents to those intersections and seeing how that's going to work. I can understand that. But again, they've done the analysis, the data is there, and that's kind of what we have to go with. So overall, I hear the concerns, but I do look at this as a balanced project that has tried to address the major areas of concern that our residents have.
Anyone else? For my comments, I just want to mention that I really am impressed by the traffic engineer and his level of assessment, his thorough analysis, and his ability to answer questions. It seems like so many times we get these TIAs and we really don't hear anything that comes out of it that makes any sense other than this is okay or this is not okay. But you've been very knowledgeable and presented your information in a way that we can understand. And I appreciate that because it's the first TIA in ages that I've heard that made good sense to me. And you definitely brought your experts with you. I do appreciate that the developer has initiated conversations with our schools because, that is one of the big concerns. If they're capped, what are we going to do? And, it's easy for a developer to say, not my problem. But I think this developer has been proactive in just about everything that's come his way and addressing it, going to the school system, working with DOT and traffic and cross connectivity. And I think they've presented a good product. I think they've gone above and beyond what they could have presented and what could get approved. I see a lot of, to me, above and beyond expectations here, and I think it'll yield a quality product. So I have no problems with this. I'll accept the motion. Ms. Archer.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, I would move to recommend approval of 2022, or make a motion, 2022-88-CZM Corbett Road Assemblage Conditional Zoning District, and make my motion that it agrees with the recommended statement of consistency and reasonableness. Did I word that okay? Oh, and include in my motion as well the conditions that have been agreed upon by the applicant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. I'll call for a 5-minute recess. Okay, folks, we'll reconvene shortly. We'll reconvene the meeting at this time. We do need to adopt our wastewater resolution for the previous action for that conditional zoning. I'll entertain a motion for that.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to move to approve 2022-88-CZM Corbett Road Assemblage Conditional Zoning District Wastewater Resolution 2022-92.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comment? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Next up is the Short Johnson Road Conditional Zoning District.
Good evening, council. So this is a request to rezone approximately 22 acres of property from RE zoning to conditional zoning residential. It would allow up to 98 units of single-family homes and townhomes at a density of roughly 3 to 5 units per acre. Again, located off of Short Johnson Road, south of the Walnut Creek subdivision as shown on the aerial map on the screen. The site plan here on the screen shows the proposed development. Majority of the development is proposed to be single-family detached homes with the potential for some single-family attached townhomes located directly along Short Johnson Road. The proposed development is proposed to have 3 access points on Short Johnson Road with water and sewer provided by the town of Clayton and electric provided by the town of Clayton, and these properties do require annexation as well. You can see the dimensional standards on the screen. Again, they're currently proposing, the goal is to have all single-family detached homes in this district. However, they do want to maintain the ability to construct some townhomes if they choose. And so if they do end up constructing some of the townhomes, the number of single-family homes will be reduced. They're not proposing any transportation improvements at this time. However, staff has encourages the council to consider negotiating condition to improve Short Johnson Road. The project will comply with Town of Clayton Stormwater Ordinance with public water available on Short Johnson Road and public sewer available through the Walnut Creek Pump Station and electric service available from the Town of Clayton. They're proposing a 20-foot wide type C landscape buffer with a 6-foot tall privacy fence along the exterior of the property and 20-foot wide street yard buffer along Short Johnson Road with 10 to 15-foot wide street yard buffers on the public roads interior to the development with street trees planted at one tree per 40 linear feet, meeting the UDC requirements. And again, proposing architectural standards as shown on the screen with limitation of certain materials and a requirement for 25% masonry on the primary street facing facade. The 2045 growth plan calls for this area to be medium density residential at 3 to 5 units an acre density, with generally less than 50% of the area used for single family attached units. So the proposal is consistent with the growth plan. Current zoning of RE permits very low density residential uses. The proposed conditional district permits medium density residential uses, and the applicant is proposing to connect to public water and extend public sewer to serve the development. And the proposed development would provide a mix of housing and density transition near the hospital and Copper District development. This development would be served by the same schools as the previous one, with West Clayton and Clayton High currently on the CAP schools list. The development will be accessed by Short Johnson Road and connectivity to Trailwood Drive and the Walnut Creek subdivision development. Clayton Community Park and Clayton Community Center are the nearby parks and recreation facilities, and the development would be served with sewer utilizing the Walnut Creek pump station, subject to the town wastewater allocation policy. Public water is available on Short Johnson Road, and the development would follow town stormwater ordinance, and all town ordinances, procedures, and approvals will be followed. With the 20-foot landscape buffer and opaque privacy fence, as well as a condition requiring disclosure on future plats, deeds, and in covenants about future potential noxious smells, noises, and dust from farming operations nearby. Staff believes that any adverse effects on joining property owners is mitigated. And again, with imposed conditions, no detriment to the general public is expected. The master plan approval criteria is here on the screen. And again, with the through the master plan narrative, and proposed conditions, staff believes that the applicant has met the criteria. The town council shall consider the recommendation of the planning board and planning director and shall adopt a written statement of reasonableness and consistency. They shall approve with conditions, or deny the conditional zoning district. However, any changes in conditions must be agreed to by the applicant prior to the council decision. And if approved, the conditional zoning district master plan narrative would be recorded and run with the land and do not expire. Staff recommends approval of the conditional zoning district subject to 15 recommended conditions of approval. As we did with the planning board, we also recommend that town council consider negotiating condition with the applicant for improvements to Short Johnson Road as discussed in the staff report. The planning board unanimously recommended approval of the conditional zoning district based on the proposed application meeting criteria for approval. They did discuss 2 items in detail. One is condition 13. The planning board had concerns over how inexpensive and typical some of the items are to include in new construction. However, they made no recommended changes. And they also discussed the Short Johnson Road improvements centered around DOT requirements, and however, they did not recommend any changes. They also found the project to be consistent with the comprehensive growth plan, future land use map, and recommended the statement of reasonableness found at the end of the presentation. The 15 conditions listed on this and the next couple screens. Again, the first 3 conditions are the standard conditions. Condition 4 requires annexation. Condition 5 is a limitation of the maximum number of units. Condition 6 is requiring the opaque buffer. Condition 7 is addressing the proposed street yards. Condition 8 is listing uses that will be prohibited. Condition 9 is a 25% masonry requirement. Condition 10 is requiring an analysis of the Walnut Creek pump station prior to subdivision development plan application for the property, and also requiring any improvements or upgrades deemed to be required by the study that will be the responsibility of the developer and will be required prior to the recordation of the first final plat. Condition 11 is a requirement for extension of the existing 8-inch water line on Short Johnson Road. And condition 12 is that informational statement about farming operations nearby. Condition 13 is relating to the sustainable high-efficiency products or appliances, again, related directly back to the wastewater allocation scoring. Condition 14 is a requirement for connecting to Town Clayton electric service, subject to any legal limitations. And condition 15 is a standard condition stating that the conditions control over the narrative or the master plan itself. On this final screen is a recommended statement of consistency and reasonableness. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant's also here with the presentation.
Any questions of staff? Mr. Casey.
I have one. I know this is going to be discussed. Seeing that this is next to an abutting farm, this may be a town attorney question or you, Ben. Is there any liability that the farm may have because it's development being next door? Sorry, I do need to write it down. Is there any liability that the adjoining farm will have, or is there any potential liability that the adjoining farm will have because it's the development next door?
I wouldn't anticipate that. The farm's pre-existing.
Okay, we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you, Ben. I will be very brief. You've heard my opening comments. One thing I will say about this is we have met with Ms. McKenna Parrish to answer your question specifically. She came to the neighborhood meeting, but we had a separate meeting with her last week, her and her family, and worked through a lot of her concerns, and I believe we have addressed everything that she was concerned about. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Kimberly Horne and then be available for questions.
Hello again, and thanks, Dean. Thanks, Ben, for the presentation, I think, which covers most of the items that we really wanted to discuss and agree with that. Just wanted to point out a few things. Again, my team is here, traffic engineer Richard Adams, also Jordan Brewer, civil engineer, and I, of course, am Richard Brown. We're all with Kimberly Horne, 421 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh. We agree with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan and the guidance that those policies prescribe for this area. Again, that medium density land use designation, in order to achieve that on this property, rezoning it from an R residential estate zoning to a moderate to medium density residential up to 5 units an acre. Our plan has been pointed out and described, capping it at 98 units, gives us an actual density of 4.4, roughly 4.4 units per acre. So comfortably under the maximum that the comp plan provides there. And then we also, just jumping through the future land use consistencies that we agree with, we also have done, similar to the previous case, an environmental assessment of this property. Some of the physical conditions on the south, particularly on the south side. The north side is largely cleared with some wooded areas, and then the south side of Short Johnson Road has a stream coming up from the southwest, into the property that continues through and then back across Short Johnson Road off-site. 50-foot stream buffers, a small pocket of wetland, but our environmental team again performed a delineation of this site, and the features that are there are mapped out here. Just a small pocket wetland that's sort of dancing on the edge of the stream buffer there. So our plan attempts again to respect those buffers and impact as little as possible to be able to access and develop the property. So just pointing out a few of those, a few aspects of how we're doing that. As you can see, we are on the south side, we're accessing the property at this driveway entrance and the western driveway entrance along Short Johnson, coming in with a network that needs to cross that stream buffer. It could do so at a couple of locations and still be under the impact thresholds for stream and wetland impacts, but we've elected to just cross at the one location, come back here, and providing in accordance with town policies, connectivity to the adjoining properties on the south there. You see the same network set up for this subdivision on the north side as well, and this connection to the Walnut Creek subdivision to the north to try to mitigate any of the concentrated traffic. Even though this is not a very intense development, it is very fairly straightforward, trying to maximize the connectivity opportunities that we have. Stormwater will be will meet all local and state requirements. In the town's stormwater and engineering design manual, you see some of the pockets where we've anticipated where reserve locations for those stormwater. At a master plan level, that's our approach, but we, if necessary, we will expand or provide additional stormwater measures to meet those requirements. And then that's really essentially except to elaborate on Ben's point in the condition we felt here in response to some of the neighborhood exchange that we have had, and listening to some of the input that we took from there. We've committed to this, the type C buffer yard, but specifically with an opaque fence at the perimeter of the site where it adjoins a residential property. To your point, Counselor, the farm to our east there it is operational as a farm with cattle kind of roaming to and fro. So we felt like it's actually a benefit for them as well as the neighborhood that we're bringing forward, to have some kind of a barrier there to just protect from those adjacencies, but to provide that 20-foot wide type C buffer with that specific condition of a fence at the property boundaries of this district. Open space, just to touch on, is about 2.75 acres of this development that we've dedicated, and so that's above the 15 or the 12.5% that would be required. And then finally, just to leave it with questions and discussion, we agree again with staff that we have met the master plan approval criteria, and we've met the consistency points of the policies of the comp plan and the 2045 comp plan and the future land use plan. And again, look forward to your questions and any comments that you may have.
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Casey?
Excuse me. I have one question. I failed to ask this at the other hearing. Do you have any elevations of the housing type? Did you hear what I said? Sorry.
Yes, I don't. It's a good thing we're not bringing 3 cases tonight. You'd be out of gas. So we do have some representations of the type of product that we intend to bring forth. Not technical elevations, however, this slide here is representative of the product mix that we are contemplating. CDP is interviewing and working and discussing alongside of this project, although they can't commit to a relationship with a builder exactly at this point. The types of builders and the types of product types that are represented here are those that we feel like match and meet the needs of this market and that we see in this development specifically, and represent some of the conditions that we've crafted with regard to the front elevations having a percentage of materiality that meets a higher quality standard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any others? Ms. Archer?
Thank you, very helpful. As noted at the planning board discussion, as well as some of the residents' comments, I believe, I have some concerns about the condition of Short Johnson Road. I mean, I have concerns about the width and the condition of Short Johnson Road, and so I wondered if you could speak to that. If I don't see any planned improvements, if there's something that we could do to, for the portion at least, I guess your furthest access point back to Highway 42, if there's something that could be done. I drove out there over the weekend, and I'm just concerned about adding, nearly 100 units to that section of road in its current condition.
Understood, and we are mindful of the condition, also have been out there and visited the site. And I may ask Mr. Adams, my traffic partner, to help answer that concern with some traffic data, because we think that matters. But I'll also just pull us back to some information that he can share with you. But although we didn't have to or trigger a TIA for this type of density and the thresholds of development that we are providing, we will have some activity with the extension of that 8-inch water line within Short Johnson. So there will be some touching of that would typically be things that we would confront during the subdivision and site permitting process. So we don't intend to skirt any of those requirements that would be at that level, but understand the desire to ensure some improvements. And I'll let Richard kind of speak to the traffic data, and then maybe we can come back to the physical condition of it. All right.
Thank you. And thank you for your kind words previously. Hopefully I'll continue to make sense. But so this will be kind of a similar explanation of what we talked about before. But again, this is, as Richard said, just a look at the theoretical traffic capacity. And two caveats I want to emphasize. One is that I'm not going to speak to the condition of the pavement and all that, and that's a whole nother story that are very relevant questions. But getting back to my handy DOT level of service manual, just the second bullet here, the DOT defines the capacity of a road with 9-foot lanes, and this is an 18-foot road, so this does meet that. They said that the minimum capacity would be about 7,500 vehicles a day. And then going back to our math that we talked about before, we're adding 98 homes, somewhere around, we'll call it 100, which is about 1,000 trips a day based on, the 10 trips a day for, single family homes, which is about, so we're consuming about 15% of the traffic capacity of Short Johnson Road based on its current width. Now, again, the caveats I want to mention, I'm not here to talk about the condition of the road because that, I don't have any information on that. And likewise, even though DOT does give us a capacity for 9-foot lanes, they don't really build that anymore. So I'm not trying to say that 9 foot is a good standard for your roads, but there are a lot of roads out there at this width, and they do define the capacity this way. So I feel like from a theoretical capacity standpoint, we're in real good shape, but there are other issues to talk about. So does that help?
That does help, thank you. And I did want to acknowledge, I understand kind of the complexity of the situation, and a TIA wasn't triggered. It's a DOT-owned road. I wasn't even, thinking that capacity would factor in. I was more thinking of the condition and that sort of thing, but that is helpful to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
So just taking that and kind of bringing it back down to the condition, what we have kind of grappled with ourselves looking at that situation, because in some ways it can benefit this development to make some improvements along that. But let me get back to a picture that we can point to. This may be the best visual that we have. Given that our frontage touches Short Johnson Road in just a couple of specific short spots, we looked at, crafting some kind of language that would, if it wasn't covered in the site permitting process, we would improve Short Johnson Road along our frontage. While I think that speaks to a reasonable responsibility of a development of this size, I don't think it speaks to the concern, because what it would likely end up, and I'm not speaking for staff here, is a fee in lieu payment of those improvements, because improving that short section of Short Johnson Road, which is about 150 to 200 feet in its intermittent improvements, really doesn't really address the concern that you have and the reality of the condition of the roadway itself. So beyond that, without really having any engineering information of the vertical condition of that roadway today, it's hard for this applicant to put forward something or volunteer something that would sort of once you dip your toe in that water, then you're having to meet DOT standards, and where do you begin and stop improving that road is our real dilemma. So while we acknowledge that it's an issue, we actually have desire to improve it somewhat ourselves. It's hard to rationalize it as a reasonable burden on this development to improve it from, our eastern property line all the way back to the point where it's improved at Amelia Station. So that's where we are in the evaluation of it at this point. Hopefully that helps answer your concern there.
Thank you. Yes, that's a good discussion, and it does. I understand that phrase, that reasonable burden, and trying to kind of flesh out what we think is reasonable for this particular road, given that it is a DOT road. We don't have engineering information, specific information about the condition of this road. We don't have a TIA. It's not triggered. All these complications here. I'll let my fellow council members weigh in, of course, as well. Given all of that and understanding the complexity, I am uncomfortable having driven on that road, imagining adding 98 units to that section of road. And maybe I'll come up with a brilliant answer while the rest of them talk, but it is something that I wish there was an answer between do nothing and do something silly, like just improve your section of frontage.
Any others? Mr. Sims.
First of all, I want to echo a little bit what Councilwoman Andrea said, but I also just got a couple questions for the TI man, Mr. Adams there. So, and you might not be able to speak to it in all fairness, but at the Amelia Church Road in 42, how much from there to the Short Johnston, right, road, do you know how far that is from there to there?
We could probably figure that out real quick. I don't, several hundred feet, I'm sure, but I don't know exactly.
Can you speak to at all as far as what the traffic that's going to be, because that's close to that intersection there?
Right.
And then we just approved 750. So now, as I look at this, can you speak to, or let me say this, I'll make it easier for you. Do you know, because you guys have been having discussions with DOT, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do you know of any type of improvements to 42 and Amelia Church that's incoming?
I do. As part of, let me pull that out, give me a second. As part of the NC 42 improvements, and actually I was just looking at that on my laptop as well, they have a number of additional lanes coming to that intersection. And of course, they're widening to 4-lane divided. And bear with me. So, yes, at that intersection, you will have you'll have dual left turn lanes from, I'm going to say, on 42 eastbound to Amelia Church northbound. You'll have 2 through lanes in each direction on Highway 42. And tell me if I'm not providing the right information. You'll also have exclusive right turn lanes on NC 42 at Amelia Church eastbound. And then you'll have 2 right turn lanes on Amelia Church southbound to turn west onto 42 to go towards the freeway, which obviously is a very heavy movement. So you'll have dual left turn lanes, kind of coming from the freeway to go north on Amelia Church. And then likewise, for those folks in the morning, there'll be dual right turn lanes from Amelia Church to go back towards the freeway. So that heavy movement will be accommodated by dual lanes in each direction, as well as dual lanes on Highway 42 in both directions. So it'll be a very different intersection when it's done.
So you said how many trips does this impact?
I'm sorry, what was that?
You said how many trips does this generate? I'm sorry.
This development as a whole would generate 990 trips, so right around 1,000 per day. some of which would go use Trailwood, but then some trips on Trailwood might come through this way as well. And my colleague here said it's about 600 feet between Short Johnson and Amelia Church. I got that right? Yeah, okay. Yes, and that's your improvements. And the other thing I should mention while we're talking about it is that Short Johnson Road will be right in, right out with this.
I'm sorry, could you say it again?
The NC 42 access at Short Johnson Road will be right in, right out only with the improvements that are on the screen here, with the Highway 42 improvements. But then they have access over to Amelia Church. And then this development will also give them access over to the signal at Walnut Creek. So really good connectivity through here. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? Ms. Archer.
I'm going to ask just a couple other follow-ups so while we're on this topic. You mentioned something about site permitting and how that might affect the condition of the road. I glossed over it. Was there something particular in the site permitting that you were thinking connected to the condition of the road?
I think what I was referencing was we will have some things during the site permitting process that we'll have to address on the infrastructure topic, whether that, that being stormwater, sidewalk, street yards, that type of infrastructure along Short Johnson Road. And correct me, Ben, if I'm wrong, curb and gutter along that frontage. So we'll be touching that in some way, or either having to discuss a fee in lieu option for those improvements along our frontage.
Thank you for clarifying that. And then you mentioned something about a water line. I can't remember what, I'm sorry. It was too much information for my brain to take in. If you could just explain that again.
Yeah, I understand. We've been living with this project for months. So fair questions and a good one. There's an 8-inch water line that is short of our property along the, I don't know if we've got a good, okay, thank you. We will be, as we get to the maybe picture, we will be needing to extend that water line to serve this development. It's a public 8-inch water line. It's roughly speaking ends about in this vicinity. So we will be extending it down, and then we'll be looping through to serve our development. And that is one of our conditions, in fact, that we will extend that 8-inch line sufficient to serve this development.
Okay. So, because it just occurred to me that came up in our discussion of the road. So would your extension of that water line disturb this road or impact this road? Or is there some way we could, is that an opportunity to do something with the road at that time?
I can't represent that it will. That's typically extended outside of the edge of pavement within the right-of-way, however. So it would, in all likelihood, if in a normal scenario, we would try and expect here to be able to extend that line outside of the edge of pavement.
Maybe is that something staff could speak about? Just, help educate me kind of where the water line is, how it relates to the road, if there's going to be work that's going to affect the road anyway, something along those lines.
Sure. So, hey, I'm Jonathan Jacobs, the Assistant Engineering Director. The water line that they describe will connect their farthest eastern property line, so that kind of vertical on the right side, but where the phase 1 marker is, that kind of shear line west to the existing apartments to provide that loop that Richard described. Since Short Johnson Road is a state maintained road, they typically do not allow lateral utilities to be under the existing asphalt where the town typically would. So to the point that Richard's making, all the disturbance should be on the south side of Short Johnson Road, but there's a high potential for impact to at least the shoulder of the road from where the depth of that water line and that construction will take place, where there may be impacts to the existing asphalt.
Okay. So sorry, just going to repeat that back to you. Okay, so you're saying that this water line actually extends up to where the apartments are, kind of up there on the left.
So this image that I pulled back up is not the one I intended to, but this, if you can barely see the satellite through, is the entrance that goes, I think it's the eastern entrance into the apartment complex, the Amelia Station Apartments. There's existing public water line infrastructure that they will tie into along that. And there's an existing water line along Short Johnson that connects from that point to 42.
Okay, so they are going to affect, at the very least, the shoulder or the edge of the road to make these water line improvements from that point to the furthest entrance of the development.
Correct. And then there will be what we would call a T or a cross at the intersection. So that western asterisk that's on the map that you see, there'll be a connection into that subdivision. Well, they will have to go completely across Short Johnson. And then on the west, where you have the driveways adjacent from each other, they will have to go across Short Johnson again to make that connection into their site.
Thank you very much. So just thinking out loud, I mean, I'm still rolling this around, and I would want to maybe hear from staff or council further on this, but it sounds like there's potential impacts to the road anyway. And I wonder if maybe we couldn't come up with some sort of compromise condition where the section that is of Short Johnson Road that is potentially impacted by this waterline work, if that section of Short Johnson could be resurfaced or even widened a little, if even DOT allows something like that, that gives us a little, at least a section of roadway that is smoother, possibly wider, if DOT allowed it. Just tossing that out, thinking out loud.
I believe I can speak on behalf of our applicant team, and if the council, would will this, I think there is a commitment to an improvement along our frontage that, if subject to DOT review and approval, that we can agree to, and provided that did not result in additional right-of-way dedication that we don't control. But I believe, particularly speaking of on the westernmost side of the development here, we control the northern right-of-way, but not the southern. And while I don't anticipate any of those improvements spilling outside of the existing right-of-way to be able to improve along our frontage, I think that is something. I do think it may be important to, staff has any sort of response or feedback that I'm not thinking about, but I do think making sure that we can, that we have the option of a fee in lieu in case there were some physical conditions where that was not, a safe, feasible condition to improve it in small segments. But I think that's something that we can discuss, adding, an improvement as a part of this zoning case.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you bearing with me on this. I think you can see where I'm coming from of imagining, and I'm sure some of you have been out to that road recently, and obviously we hear, as you see tonight, a lot of concerns about traffic and roadways and that sort of thing. Just to clarify, when you said your frontage, or I may be using the wrong word, but, and I agree with you, in my head, this is not trying to make this a really big deal and have you acquire right away and whatever. It's basically just to make the existing road better for the, the 98 people and everyone else using it. But did you say your frontage? Is that the word you used?
Yes, and when I refer to that along the right-of-way segments that touch Short Johnson Road of our property, which are these two segments, one to the far east and then the other there to the far west on the north side. We would make those improvements as a part of that idea, of that notion.
Thank you.
Any other comments for the applicant or questions? Hearing none, this has been noticed as a public hearing, and we'll open up the floor for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, please approach the podium and state your name for the clerk.
My name is Charles Parrish, and I'm here to speak on behalf of McKenna Claire Parrish. It's my brother's niece and nephew's daughter, and both of them deceased. I'm involved in a trust. When Dean mentioned about building 98 houses on that place over there, there's an active cattle operation going on, and it's going to stay an active cattle operation as long as the bull does the job. So we were concerned about all this housing and cars and traffic. We met with Dean and talked about the fencing. They're going to put up the proper fencing. They're going to put up the buffers. We talked about some of the property happens to be used, some where the runoff's going to go. He went over everything with us. So rather than sit home, not say nothing, we're very excited about this development. It is a dead-end road, and it has a lot of people that come down there and doing things they shouldn't be doing, and dropping trash off, refrigerator stoves, couches. So now we're going to get some activity there. We're going to get people there and some lights and streets, and so we're excited about the development. And we took it with Dean meeting with us and giving the support that we needed. And we, like I said, we had a lot of concerns about what was going on during the development phase, how the roads, the one-lane roads, the dead-end road, how to get out. So we understand all that. So we're buying into the progress that's going to take place, and we're very supportive of it. Okay, and we want to thank Dean again for coming out there and sitting down with us. You need to ask me something?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Parrish.
Thank you.
Any others? Hearing none, we'll close the public session and turn it over to council for comments or action, Mr. Sims.
So first of all, I'm excited. You sitting up here a year, and I think this is the first time I heard somebody with the applicant actually said that they had some conversations and they were able to hash them out. And I love that. So at the end of the day, there was some give and take, and I think that's what we want to see. I do have to express that I do have some concerns, and I understand that some of that is not on the applicant per se, but at the end of the day, we're looking at putting that 98 homes in there. So those are individuals going to have to deal with that road. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm struggling with who is it on? Who is it on for us to have that improvement? Because once it happens, then on the backside, I hear from those individuals talking about the road, So that's what I'm kind of struggling with right now, even to the extent of, there's going to be some improvements right there in the areas that they're responsible for. I guess we just want to like to see something.
Mr. Casey.
I'm going to try to talk. I think it's kind of a unique situation because there's not a lot of, this project doesn't have a lot of road frontage, but that particular development is going to use Short Johnson Road a lot. So I agree with Councilman Sims and Councilwoman Archer. I don't want the applicant to have to go out and try to buy right-of-way easement either. I think that's excessive. So we got to figure out a path forward to get this work. I don't have that answer, but I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in.
Ms. Archer.
I agree with both of you, and I really appreciate you hanging in there with my questions and, expressing my concerns. At this point, I am leaning toward requesting to continue this or give us another meeting, give us some time. There's a lot of information that came out here that, you know, I would like to make sense of, as well as discuss with staff. Things like maybe there is additional engineering information we can get about the condition of that road. Maybe I've made a mountain out of a molehill based on my visual observations of the road. We had information about the threshold given tonight, information about what happens during the site permitting process, which I'm not totally certain. I feel like I could ask additional questions more specifically about the water line and how that would look, how that might or might not affect the road. You know, how the fact that these are two very small frontages on one large road, we've just never seen that before since I've been up here. I feel like I just have a lot of questions, and trying to put all this together in a rushed way doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel like it does justice to everybody involved and the future residents there. And so I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility.
I guess the only thing that I'm struggling with is that the only person that came up, you know, they seem like they worked it out with them. So that's the only thing I guess I'm struggling with, that, you know, I do understand on the backside, which I expressed myself, is the 98 homes. So I don't know how much more as far as from the applicant that we're really going to get from a decision standpoint.
I agree with Mr. Sims. I think the applicant has done their part. I think the condition of the road, at the end of the day, if somebody wants to move in there, they've got to drive across it to look at that property to figure out if that's where they want to live or not. And they have to make a decision, is this a road that I'm willing to drive across every day or not? And it's a state road, and at this point, I just don't think that the burden should be on this applicant to fix that road.
I'm going to try to ask another question, maybe to staff. If there was a development further down the road, because it is a dead-end road, would the town of staff ask for improvements to be made for that road if that farm, hypothetically, I hope it doesn't, but if that farm ever become a subdivision or something to that effect, what would we kind of demand or request?
So again, Jonathan Jacobs, Assistant Engineering Director, it would depend on the scenario of the density of the development. So if it triggered a full traffic analysis, which this did not, that analysis may warrant requirements that staff could require per our current UDO or UDC. If it was a similar development here where it does not meet the threshold for a traffic study, we would be having a similar conversation that we're having here about elective improvements, where we would still require the standard frontage improvements that we've described tonight. And to clarify, Councilwoman Archer, the frontage improvements would be curb and gutter, sidewalk, and probably very minimal widening to accommodate that curb and gutter, which is a standard part of our UDC for any development. But there's opportunities to collect a payment in lieu of that, because in reality, Short Johnson may never become a curb and gutter street, and we could potentially use those funds to make other improvements through the corridor. And I'll also note that Joshua Barrett and I rode to Short Johnson today based on some of the feedback before the meeting, and it does appear that if the existing road was edged, there does appear to be grass growing over a significant portion. I'm not confirming that, but there may be potentially some more pavement there than we actually think there is today.
Thank you. What are the wishes of the council?
I make a motion that we approve Ordinance 2022-11-0. Nope, that's the wrong one. Yeah, no, 22-11-02. With conditions, we find this zoning action to be consistent with the future land use map in the adopted 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Next up, we have the Paulville rezoning. Excuse me, before we do that, can I get a motion for the wastewater allocation for the previous project?
I move that we approve the wastewater resolution 2022-92. Oh, sorry about that. 93. 2022-93.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Mr. Howell.
Good evening. This is a rezoning request to rezone a property from Highway Business Special Use District, or SUD, to just Highway Business B3. It's approximately 1.14 acres, currently vacant, located at 2 Court and Gateway Drive, and it's related to the next item on your agenda. The current zoning map above shows it as B3 with a SUD designation, and the proposed zoning map would just take away that SUD designation. The SUD designation is no longer used. It was put in place some years ago as a zoning district. It remains on even though we no longer use it. We have been requesting applicants as they come in with properties that are under that designation to rezone them to remove that designation. As far as consistency and compatibility, the future land use map shows this area as an employment center, which B3 falls under. And as you see here, the employment center language from our land use plan, and we do believe that the request is consistent with land use goal 1, land use policy 1.1, land use strategy 1.1.1 of the comprehensive growth plan 2045. Approval of the rezoning would allow any permitted use within the B3 zoning district to be constructed on the site. The town council should consider all potential uses of the site prior to approving this proposal. Staff recommends approval and planning board recommended approval as well. And with that, you'll find the statement of existing reasonableness on the screen. The applicant is also here if you have any questions, and this is a public hearing.
No, the next one. The rezoning is not, but as soon as for the record, Mr. Casey was asking about if this was quasi-judicial, and that will be the next item on the agenda. This a rezoning is legislative and not quasi-judicial. Okay, as this has been noted as a public hearing, I'll open the floor for public comment. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, turn it over to council for action. Mr. Casey?
I make a motion to approve rezoning 2022-170-RZ.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Next up, we have, related to that project, the special use permit application for Clayton Paulville. As this is going to be a quasi-judicial hearing, I'm going to ask our attorney to remind everyone the difference in quasi-judicial and legislative.
With a quasi-judicial, or what's called today an evidentiary hearing, it's a due process hearing, a fact-finding hearing. The council discretion is limited to applying the evidence presented at the hearing to the factual requirements as set forth in the code. Witnesses are sworn, and certain types of evidence is required to come from experts, such as property values, engineering, stormwater, traffic, things of that nature that you'd have to have expert testimony in court.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll ask our clerk to swear in anyone wishing to speak or provide testimony in this item. If you are going to speak, please stand, and I'll ask our clerk to administer the oath.
Anyone wishing to offer testimony, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief? And when you come up to offer your testimony, please sign the oath sheet.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll hear from staff.
Good evening once again. So this is a request for a special use permit for a kennel use with outdoor runs. A kennel use is permitted in the B3 zoning district. However, in order to have outdoor dog runs, they are required to receive a special use permit, which is why we're here tonight. Again, the property is approximately 1.55 acres in size, located at the corner of Gateway Drive and 2 Court, and it is currently vacant. The proposed site plan is shown here on the screen, included for informational purposes only. Again, you're deciding on the special use permit this evening. Site plan has been reviewed and generally approved by the staff technical review committee in November. The proposal is consistent with comprehensive land use plan, which shows this area as an employment center. While we don't necessarily view the kennel use itself as an employment center or an employment use, the employment center land uses may also include a limited amount of supporting commercial uses, such as restaurants and convenience retailers to serve employees, or in this case, a convenience service. It is consistent with the surrounding zoning and land uses. As you can see, the surrounding properties are zoned either B3 or O and I. There is some RE zoning back behind it, but it is not directly adjacent to this property. Considerations for a special use permit. Again, the town council shall make the final decisions. The special use permit shall address specific findings of fact. The burden of producing competent material evidence showing these findings of fact are met is on the applicant, and all findings must be met for the special use permit to be approved. You shall consider recommendations in the staff report and may approve the SUP with the proposed conditions, add or remove conditions with the agreement of the applicant, or deny the application upon finding that one or more of the findings of fact are not met, or you may send the application back to the technical review committee for additional consideration. Just briefly going through the findings of fact. Finding 1 is that the application will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plans as submitted and approved. You'll see the applicant response there on the screen as well as in your staff report. Finding fact 2 is that the application meets all required specifications and conforms to the standards and practices of sound land use planning and the town code of ordinances and other applicable regulations. Finding 3 is that the application will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, will not be detrimental to the use or development of adjacent properties or other neighborhood uses. And finding 4 is that the application will not adversely affect the adopted plans and policies of the town or violate the character of existing standards for development of the adjacent properties. Again, staff does not make recommendations on SUPs. However, if the council does decide to approve this, we do have some proposed recommended conditions that we have worked on with the applicant. The applicant has agreed to these. They are on the screen in the next one. First one is that the conditions of approval and any others included with associated site plan shall be recorded upon the final plan set, which must be delivered to the planning department for review and approval. The development shall be constructed in substantial conformance with the special use permit and the site plan. The buildings and development will be constructed in accordance with the architectural elevations provided in the associated site plan, including identified facade materials. Condition 4 is relating to a small parking lot near the veterinary building, requiring either a bump out at the end of the lot or markings and signage stating that the last several spaces are for employee parking only. And again, this is a concern due to the fact that as shown on the site plan, there would be very little maneuverability room if cars were parked at the end spaces. Condition 5 is a requirement to revise the landscaping plan to remove any trees at least 10 feet away from any water or sewer lines. As noted in a comment from the last submittal. Condition 6 is regarding that the outdoor play yards and outdoor runs shall only be used between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. each day. And then condition 7 would just require a revised site plan package addressing these conditions submitted prior to approval of the site plan. And with that, I'm done with my presentation. Staff is here. They do have, I think, several experts with them. They do have a presentation to provide, and there may also be members of the public here to provide testimony as well.
Okay, thank you. We'll now hear from the applicant and his team.
Good evening, council members. My name is Phil. I'm the founder and CEO of Paulville. So today I'm going to be presenting along with Pat Flanagan from Century 21. He's the VP of Commercial Real Estate, and Will Heiler, our site engineer on the project. Paulville has several locations. We're based in Wilmington, North Carolina. What's special about Paulville is that we are designed to meet an evolving and sophisticated pet parent. Increasingly, pet parents, and I'm sure the town of Clayton is no different than everywhere else, they increasingly see their pets as a member of the family. So gone are the days of sticking them in a chain link cage when it's time to leave and go away on vacation. Increasingly, pet parents want more. And so you can see they're obviously higher end facilities that we offer. As you can see, we offer pet boarding, grooming, daycare, training, and veterinary. I want to speak primarily, however, to pet boarding because that is an important component because we do offer indoor-outdoor enclosures. The way these are operated is actually, the pictures are fairly helpful here because you can see at the bottom left-hand corner an indoor-outdoor enclosure with a guillotine doggy door that our staff can raise and lower. So we lower that during inclement weather. We also lower that when we leave for the evenings. We're open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And so those are closed all night. So one of the important parts, and now I'll refer to the outdoor portion of the enclosure, which you can see on the right-hand side in the middle picture. As you can see, these are solid divider panels dividing each dog. These are very important. This is the modern kennel facility because, you know, when the old school style is the chain link and dogs are prone to fight, fence fight and make a lot of noise. What we find is that dogs usually don't bark at things that they don't see. So we go to great efforts at Paulville because it's also in our best interest to create a low stress, relaxing environment for the pets in our care. So the pets cannot see their neighbor when they're staying in their enclosure. And we do also offer other things such as webcams and TVs and so forth. So we have a few pictures up here of the proposed Clayton Paulville. One of the things I want to speak to with this is that we have several locations, as I indicated. we're looking for the low-hanging fruit in the market. The Raleigh-Durham market is we've more or less covered the Cape Fear region. We have a few other locations elsewhere, but the Raleigh-Durham market is our target market. In looking at this market, we realize that this is, as you can see, all these residences are coming in, and now we need to backfill all these folks moving to the area with services. The town of Clayton is drastically underserved, which is why we chose this first. So we want to come in and serve the pet parents of Clayton, North Carolina. And it's very difficult to do that because, when you have a kennel facility like this, it can be very difficult to do this, but when we found this particular piece of property, we saw it was surrounded by businesses. We said, oh my God, this is perfect. It's very, very difficult to find that. So so we're very excited to offer this today. So I'll go ahead and turn it over now to Pat Flanagan, and he will talk about the impact on valuations of surrounding properties.
Hi, I'm Pat Flanagan, VP of Commercial Real Estate with Century 21, the Triangle Group. I went old school and printed them off, so can I give you guys a copy?
Pass those through the clerk.
So as you'll see in the package there, here we go. As we see in the package there, the first page just kind of shows you, like, of course, where the property is with the different businesses, the different type of businesses that are around the property, and the businesses that could be impacted, the commercial real estate there that could be impacted by it. No residential properties around this, as we can kind of see in the diagram here. You guys know the area as well. The next page basically just giving you a copy of the site plan to kind of give you an idea of how the building is going to be laid out on site. And then the next piece of it is where I tried to find something that would be comparable to this. And honestly, it's difficult because, as Phil had mentioned, there's a shortage of this in the retail space out there, in the commercial space out there. I did look at their spaces they have on the coast over there. And actually, as I'll go into a little bit deeper, I actually even placed some calls to some of the neighbors around there just saying, hey, what do you guys think about this? The one example I did find is over in Apex. And it's called Pet Paradise. Pet Paradise went in to a space off of Holly Springs Road. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Holly Springs and 1010. There's a food line right there. And as we continue looking through the package, you can see the map as far as like where they went in. Very similar as far as their space in the commercial world to what the Pawville is doing as well. You can kind of see on the next page there how those property valuations actually kind of went through. Back in 2014, Christian Brothers, the automotive mechanic repair shop up there on the corner, went in, and if you look kind of big numbers there on the far right-hand side, their cost per acre was $437,000. When Pet Paradise went in, they actually ended up paying $331,000 per acre. After Pet Paradise went in 2019, there was the Ivy Brook Academy, preschool academy that went in right there. They went in at almost $575,000 per acre. And then actually just closed about 2 months ago. No construction started yet. There is a car wash that went in there as well. They went in at $857,000 an acre. So the impact on this product in the market, as we can see in this scenario right here, did not play a big factor on the market. Can I say forever that it won't? I can't tell you that. Market always changes, right, depending on what's going into the space and that kind of stuff. But I do feel confident based on the studies that I did, from what I found, is that it's not going to impact the value of the different businesses over there. Additional information is included. The Wake County Public Records is there, so you can kind of see, when they did close, what the prices per acre were as well. And then the last couple pages, there are two properties. One actually is one of theirs out of the coast that I actually called some of the neighbors around there and just asked them, hey, have you guys had any impact on this? Is it bothering your clients? No, we hardly hear them at all. No problems whatsoever. We hear the dogs every now and then, but it's not impacting our business. That was the one that has a bar next to it. The other one that's a little bit closer to us, over off of Knightdale Boulevard or Knightdale Expressway over there. I talked to the neighbors over there, Mosher Engineering, and their office space, that kind of stuff. And she said maybe every now and we go outside, we'll be able to hear it when they come out. This is going to be a much more example of the Pawville. They don't have runs, they just have a big, huge open space that they're running around in. And she said it does not affect us in the least bit and would not impact us. Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Will Heiler. I am the civil site engineer for Pawville. I was the one that was doing the application and dealing firsthand with the city planning department, addressing their comments. As for the site layout, I'll just try to give you the general concept of what we're thinking here. I'll start off with the vicinity of where it's at. You can see it's on Highway 70, right across the street from the ABC liquor store, to give you a frame of reference. This is one of the last lots left in that commercial site. So it's pretty much primed and ready to go. All the utilities are in place. All we need is put a building in. We just tie into the utilities and we're operational. But as for the site layout, I'll just go through the general. I'll go through the general concept here. We propose 2 ingress-egress points in the site since there is a shared, it's hard to read, but there is a shared access driveway next to the established commercial business next to the US Highway 70. And we plan on actually bringing vehicles in and being able to drop pets off. And I think that's one of the primary features of Pawville is people heading into Raleigh for work and whatnot are able to drop their pets off before work. And we also propose plenty of parking. We did ask for a 10% reduction in parking because we didn't think it was really necessary, that many parking spots, but I believe Ben Howell, the planning director, already approved that. For the neighborhood meetings, there was no concerns. The project underwent 2 neighborhood meetings and nobody showed up. So we figured, nobody really had any concerns of what we were planning. And I'll just address the findings of facts. I believe I can address 3 out of the 4. One was already addressed. I'll start with the first one, is that the application will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located or proposed and developed according to the plans as submitted and approved. Excuse me. As an extra barrier protection, the outdoor dog runs, we propose a 6-foot opaque wood slatted fence along the perimeter of the property where the outdoor dog runs are in case an animal gets loose, and it also protects people. There will also be ADA compliance on and off site. There's a sidewalk proposed all along the property frontage, and just to connect the 2 ADA spots or the 2 sidewalks that come from the school and come from, I believe, there's a school to the north, and then there's also optometrists and various pest control and other businesses on the other side. We propose that connection as well as ADA ramps. The ingress egress point is 24 feet wide. We see no issue with that, with cars coming in and dropping off their pets. With that being said, people will drive slowly, and I think, being 24 feet wide, there's plenty of room I'll I'll address the second issue is that the application meets all required specifications and conforms to the standards and practices of sound land use planning and the town code of ordinances and other applicable regulations. We have undergone multiple plan checks with the city planning, and we've addressed all those plan checks. We didn't ask for any variances whatsoever. You know, parking, ADA setbacks, we're all complying. Vehicular access points, and you know, if anything else is needed during final construction, you know, there's always plenty of room. This isn't a big cram job of a site. There's plenty of room to be able to make improvements if there's necessary. Number 4, the application will not adversely affect the adopted plans and policies of the town or violate the character of existing standards for development of the adjacent properties. As you know, the reason why this property had to undergo a special use permit is because of the outdoor dog runs. And per the U development code, kennels and vet clinics, you know, are permitted in B3 zoning district. We did ask for a 10% reduction, but that's not really applicable in this situation, if you ask me. But other than that, you know, we're not altering code, and we went all the way through the UDC, couldn't find anything that we were not complying with. So other than that, you know, I conclude my findings, and if there's any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Ms. Archer.
Thank you so much for that presentation and information. Just for the nature of the special use permit, I was going to make sure that I double checked on your credentials in terms of providing the evidence for finding of fact number 3.
Mm-hmm.
So you're vice president of, I'm sorry, yes, if you could approach the podium, my apologies.
Yeah, vice president of commercial real estate with Century 21 Triangle Group.
Okay, and just to confirm, does that mean you're either a broker or an appraiser or neither?
I'm a broker.
A broker? You are a broker?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions of the applicant? Mr. Casey.
I have a couple. There was no neighborhood, nobody showed up for the neighborhood meeting, you said. And you may not have, but has anybody spoken with Miss Abernathy, who owns the Kids Are Kids next door, and is she aware that you sent information, I'm sure, but is she aware that there's a possibility of a pet facility coming in next door?
We, other than sending her the mailers, no, we haven't had any contact.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned there's a fence going to be surrounding the outside dog runs. Can you speak to like some of the safety features of that, considering that there's a daycare next door?
Well, as far as I know, the daycare has a fence surrounding it as well. The outdoor fence, I believe, is a secondary precaution, correct, Phil?
It is. It's an 8-foot fence all the way around. We also have concrete at the bottom. We're very concerned about dogs getting out, obviously. We have not, with all of our locations, we have never had a dog dig under or go over an 8-foot fence. Any dog getting out was always through a gate or through a door.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was regarding the dumpster. Obviously, dogs, animals have waste. Can you elaborate on that? Is the smell going to interfere with the neighbors? What's the kind of protocol on that?
Yeah, so good question. So any bags of fecal matter, we tie up, put in the dumpster, and then that is, since it's taken away so frequently, at least once a week, we have never had a situation with smell around the dumpster.
Yeah, and to add on to that, most of the stormwater will be directed towards basins for treatment and stormwater control, and that will, reduce smells as well. If there's anything in the yards, it'll either infiltrate into the ground or head towards those basins.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? Any others? Okay, hearing none. We'll now open the floor for anyone wishing to speak for or against the project. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and turn it over to council for deliberation. Ms. Archer.
In my opinion, the applicant has met all 4 findings of fact.
I'd like to say my daughter used to go to Kids Are Kids. I think it makes sense that you have a daycare and a pet facility right next door. You can drop them off. And just make sure you drop the kid off at the daycare, not the pet facility. So I'm positive this makes sense. So I approve too.
I feel the same. I don't see anything. I think the applicant met their findings of fact. Between our staff's presentation stating that it meets our policies and plans and the expert testimony we've heard, I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I just want to say that I do feel in conjunction with the other council people there, I do find it a little unusual though on their website. I guess we already approved it because they said construction plans are underway, so.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think this is a good idea, and I think we should just go ahead and push this forward.
Okay. And at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I move that we approve 2021-169-SUP with the conditions noted in the staff report. And I don't know, do we have okay, thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Okay, we're going to move along staff report, starting with town manager.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm going to keep my comments limited this evening just based on the time here, but I would like to go ahead and speak right now regarding the school resource officer update. That's later on the agenda. Chief Tart had to unexpectedly not be here this evening, so I'm going to pinch hit here a little bit. We were notified by Johnson County Public Schools that they recently were awarded a grant through the Center for Safer Schools that would cover adding school resource officers to all of the schools within our jurisdiction. I believe that the grant that they received is for the overall county as well, but they asked us if we would consider adding the additional staff, which for us would be a total of 4 to put them in all the elementary schools at this point as well. Chief Tart was going to come tonight. From a staff level, we are supportive of that. We have to understand a little bit more in terms of what the dollars are. I believe it's a 2-year grant. Beyond that, there is potential for the funding to get extended again, but we would obviously have some portion of that the town would have to pick up. We are certainly willing to support that from a staff level. Chief Tart was going to ask for the potential to recruit right now for at least one of those officers. It does take time for them to have to go through the proper training and as well as just the recruitment process overall. So if it is something that this council would be willing to support, that would be the ask in front of you. And then as part of the mid-year budget, we'd be looking at identifying any additional resources that would be needed to support this moving forward.
Seeing as how Chief Tart is asking for some official support here from us, I'll entertain a motion to support the project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you very much. The only other thing I was going to say is hope you all enjoy your Thanksgiving. Have a happy Thanksgiving and safe travels for those that are.
Thank you. Town Attorney.
No report. Oh.
Town Clerk.
I'm going to give the clerk's report. I just want to take notice that the agenda tonight was over 1,000 pages. And I've seen 600 and 700, but I think this is a new record.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for being here and making sure that we stay within bounds with such a large agenda. Town Clerk.
No report.
Okay, other town staff, we'll start with Ben Howell on a downtown master plan update.
All right, I will be short. Downtown Master Plan update. We've been working now for a few months. We attended the Harvest Festival where we had great turnout and had a lot of input as part of our public engagement strategy. And so we're now getting ready to have our first official public meeting. We've had stakeholder interviews. We held those a couple months ago. We're also getting ready to meet with the railroad with our Downtown Master Plan update consultants. And then December 14th, we'll have a public meeting here in Town Hall from 6 to 8 p.m. Anyone can come. We're going to be providing an update of where we are in the downtown plan, and as well as gather some additional input. And then moving out of this public meeting, our consultants will begin preparing some concept plans in coordination with some property owners, and we'll bring those back in sometime in January, February for our next public meeting. So also wanted to mention we still have our survey out for the Downtown Master Plan update. You have a QR code there on the screen and the survey links at the bottom. But that survey is still going to be active here for a few more days. So we've been pushing it out over social media and through our town website. We'll hopefully get a few more pushes, but other than that, it's going well. So any questions?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Howell.
Thank you.
Mr. Pierce.
Yes, sir. Good evening, council. Quick update on their downtown strategic plan. So again, this is the shorter term plan to complement the master plan here. Their DDA has really been heading up. Our consultants presented earlier this month both the data plan underneath it and as well as some of the draft strategies. Had a chance to look at those at the last DDA board meeting. They're actually going to do a special meeting here next week to dig further into those. They've already kind of started to kind of think about how those fit into their 4 different committees that Christy Thompson talked about earlier, and we need to get feedback by middle of December back to the consultants, and then we should turn around and have a deeper dive and hopefully a draft final plan or something close to that for you all to look at the January 3rd work session. So moving along really good and excited about the progress there. I'm going to tag on one other thing here at request. Campo is doing the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. The Southern Corridor Bus Extension Study is currently open for public comment. So this is kind of the end of the feasibility study that they are all doing here, looking at an additional feasibility of a Gardner to Clayton route. Just a couple quick highlights here, but most importantly, folks can go fill that survey out at I just lost it. Here we go. WakeBRTExtensionStudy.com. So WakeBRTExtensionStudy.com. But really looking at their preferred alternative is to go all the way to Powhatan with service as opposed to stopping at NC 42. They're also looking at a 1-seat ride, which would double ridership, so you could ride from Clayton and not have to transfer in Gardner. So that they estimate will have daily ridership of 4,500 folks rather than 2,400 folks. So you get, there's going to be probably more operational costs there, but you get more bang for your buck. So a cool thing is we look at different ways to utilize and get more people moving here and hopefully alleviate traffic or at least mitigate traffic impacts into the future. So hope folks will go express their opinions on that into the future. And there was a comment on funding in the other transportation plans. I just want to point out that the projects out of that PED plan we used in our LAP recommendation. So the PED plan is already helping to get some of those higher priority projects and be able to get those and fund those, which is a great funding source. So that's all I have. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Any other staff? Seeing none, we'll open the floor for informal discussion and public comment. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss legal matters and economic development.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now that we're back in open session, I do want to make sure I open the floor for any council comments. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good evening. Happy Thanksgiving.